It is Monday night. It is SkepTalk. Seth Andrews and Aaron Adair. Dr. Adair. Good to see you again. It's been a few years since we've actually had an on-air conversation. Trying to remember what the context was when we talk a lot. Was it about the book? Trying to remember.
Oh,
I think it was about the book.
You just make me have to sell the things
Yeah,
I got. So yes, we were talking about this book here about aliens and religion with my co-author Jonathan M.S. Pierce. And yeah.
Did you ever hear Kent Hovind? Was it Kent Hovind? No, it was Ken Ham of Answers in Genesis, who went public years ago, and he said, if extraterrestrial life is indeed discovered, all of the aliens are going to hell because they apparently were tainted as well in original sin with Adam and Eve in the garden, and Christ's atonement would not or could not have covered them because they don't live on planet Earth. So if we discover aliens, they're all hellbound. And I don't know why that nugget of information stuck in my brain, but the book itself was fascinating. So this isn't a book talk, but just for those, because I know some are curious, you were linking what? The search for alien life or the belief in extraterrestrial life with religious thinking?
In general, if we do discover the existence of life, and especially intelligent life, what are the plausible reactions that religion might have? Does it actually support some religious views over others? Does it now prove atheism, or does it prove Mormonism? Obviously, the UFO religions are going to have a field day, while the Catholics will have a little bit more explaining to do. The Mormons will be okay. They've been good with alien gods for a long time. So it's varied. We also talk about, hey, some of the problems that religion has had, such as the problem of suffering or the problem of evil, how much worse does the problem get just by the fact that aliens exist, and just by sheer probability, whatever terrible thing has happened on Earth, there's an alien species out there somewhere that's had it even worse. How do we explain that if already we think evil is already a bit difficult to explain on theism? And because I'm a physics person, a math person, I found excuses to actually take these theology problems and solve differential equations and run computer simulations to help answer those questions. So as far as I know, this is the only theology book that applies advanced mathematics.
Okay, I like it. By the way, the phone lines are wide open. If there's something on your mind, you want to talk religion and what you might think is or call the science of religion, or if you're an atheist, agnostic, secular, humanist, or whatever, you got something compelling to say? Well, call up and say it. The number is on the screen. There are discussions being had about, and it may already be happening, religions, cults, etc., revolving around AI, people worshiping the god of AI. That going to be a thing more and more, Aaron, do you think?
I won't be surprised, considering I would say the human propensity to find the divine in just about anything. Even like decades ago, there were like extremely simplistic therapy chatbots. And when I'm saying simple, I mean what you could do with a computer in the 80s, where the computer would just parse and take whatever statement you have and turn it into a question that you have to then answer and just make that your therapist. People were falling in love with these kinds of chatbots in the 80s. And you can imagine how much better they are now if we've already were having people feeling, very strong emotional attachments to pre-Tron level graphics or speech patterns to what we have now and what they're going to be in the next 10 years. Yeah, we're gonna divinize, hypothesize these computers.
I saw a making of Tron, the original 1982 Tron documentary. It's remarkable. It's remarkable what they had to go through to be able to produce what were then blow your mind cutting edge graphics. The kind of stuff that I thought, how was this even possible? The stuff we so take for granted today. But there's a lot of psychology involved. Neither one of us are, I'm not a psychologist. We're just sort of armchair psychologists. But you think about, I go to Chat GPT. Let's say I'm lonely. Okay. And I type in, I'm lonely. The response would be, I'm so sorry to hear that you're lonely. What's wrong? right? This is the kind of thing we might get back. And so I begin to say, well, things are tough at work and I miss being in a relationship. Oh, blah, blah, blah. And before you know it, I am engaging in what would on the surface feel like connection. Human beings desperate for connection with fellow human beings and in many cases with the divine. And then if you get into something that it seems intelligent or there's hyper agency, we were talking about that Arthur C. Clarke quote, any advanced technology would be indistinguishable from magic. Have you thought about what would attract people to being attracted to AI, something artificial that feels human?
Part
There are no
of
small.
it
There are
is,
no. There's no small talk on this show,
yeah.
Aaron. I'm just setting you up, brother.
Yeah,
Go
I mean,
ahead. Go
yeah,
ahead.
I mean, part of it is this: is insofar as the technology is advanced enough that you can think there's a personality on the other side of the screen. If you feel like that personality is there and supportive, and I've also heard stories of even like people like falling in love, marrying their uh, dolls or things like that that have enough AI behind them to have like conversations, but just acting like uh, the closest we can do to a Stepford wife in modern doll form. People kind of fall in love with that because it's like, hey, I'm getting everything I want, even though it also takes away all the challenges of having relationships with fully developed people who may not agree with every stupid thing I say. And given the number of stupid things I say, I need someone to push back on that and not just support every bit of nonsense that somehow comes off my tongue.
Does seem a
That's
bit
healthy.
one-sided, doesn't it? You've got someone who essentially is going to meet your every need, and
Yeah.
you don't have that autonomy. Well, at least not yet. Do you worry about technology turning on us? I hate to go all Skynet
Mm,
before we. And again, the phone lines are wide open here. I'm waiting for the
yes.
switchboard to populate. But here's an
I'm
example, Aaron. Oh, did you want to start? Because I had an
No,
example
go
to
for it. Go
tease
for it.
I just finished a true story broadcast, which is one of my shows that I do, about how thousands of people die because a doctor's prescription is handwritten and the pharmacist misreads the medication that the doctor wrote down. So we've all
Mm.
joked about a doctor's handwriting. And apparently, somebody might, instead of Prilosec, it's Prozac, but except it's a more extreme example. And one of the cases was somebody who needed high blood pressure medication. And instead, the pharmacist saw something else and prescribed low blood pressure medication, and the patient died. And so AI is being used to go in and analyze a lot of the signatures and draw correlations and see patterns and ask questions to help save lives. And so I'm not a total Luddite when it comes to artificial intelligence. I know it has its uses, but I'm worried about brain rot. You know, I'm worried about deep fakes. I'm worried
Mm.
about the internet becoming even more of a wild west of crazy disinformation when we're getting to the point now when the AI result is the first one in a Google search and many people don't go any further. So having teed all of that up, talk to me, Mr. Physics, about, what the world may look like. What are your thoughts? Artificial intelligence.
Yeah, I connect to it also because it's part of what I use for my day job. So I I know both the powers of it and the pitfalls of it, and I'm less worried, at least near term, about the Skynet sort of AI take over the world sort of thing. My worry is much more immediate, that we create this tool that can also blind us from what is real anymore. The fact that if you get like spam email, someone had to physically write that, and that's at least a bottleneck for producing that. But now that the fact that you can have these produced at scale and tailored to individuals all completely automatically, um, there's so much information out there that is now relatively easy to create fake info that looks just real enough to convince most people, or at least enough people, that we can't have the conversations we need about what's real and make actionable, good decisions. I feel that's the danger that we have most immediate in front of us. And that's only going to get worse as the AI gets better at disguising the fakeness to it.
I think
I
one of the challenges too is, RFK Jr. makes a Tylenol autism connection from, the White House podium. And we seem to be a culture where they lean into that because there's a conspiracy element to it. There may be a compassion element. Oh my God, we need to protect our children, which is a common thing that we hear. But what becomes frustrating is that you and I say, all right, well, the responsible thing to do is to show the data set that there is no Tylenol autism link, period. This is bullshit. And pregnant women should be taking Tylenol for these particular symptoms, blah, blah, blah. But the more we try to debunk, the more they say, you know what, that's just what big pharma or big autism would want you to say. So the more it's refuted, the more they dig their heels in, which brings the question, how in the world do you break through that, right? Because the more evidence against seems to be the more evidence for. What do you do?
For those sorts of things, to putting out the misinformation, you can do it with a bullhorn. To reverse it, you can only really do it like individual long conversations, and that just doesn't scale. So we have our work cut out for us, but we can make progress. And perhaps the best thing is the fact that right now is the claim it's Tylenol that's autisming your kids. And I'm trying to use English at least as good as the president's right now by saying this. It can no good happen. Only good can. Um,
Autisming.
whatever the story, whatever
That's a
the
new.
story is, I'm betting. Yeah, I'm just betting
Go
though.
ahead.
In 6 months, it's going to be a different claim of what's causing the intake or increase in autism, and then 6 months from now, it'll be something else. Which means whatever was the original lie a year ago, people will have forgotten. So at least the cure will be the next bit of stupid that kind of erases the previous stupid. That's not exactly inspiring, but it does mean to me that if we can just keep coming out and saying, hey, we'll be the honest brokers of where the evidence is, and we'll point out this folk changes his story every few months after they keep getting dunked on and debunked by actual evidence, and that they have to take it back every time. I would hope at least eventually enough people will say, hey, maybe we should listen to someone who actually is a doctor rather than the person who's been wrong a bunch of times and the worm in their brain is probably making more accurate statements.
I had somebody queued up, but they were in the car and had to hang up. They're going to dial right back. And again, the phone number and web link are right there if you want to dial in and talk about whatever is on your mind. You and I were talking off air before we started about pessimism and optimism every day. Was it the Atlantic that had a headline that said, how can anything be a scandal in a time when everything is an outrage? And I'm paraphrasing there. We've come to the point now where every day it's what Steve Bannon, who used to be Trump's main strategist, said. It's a tactic. They call it flooding the zone. You throw out 3 or 4 outrageous things every single day. The media doesn't keep up. The public certainly can't keep up or doesn't want to. They check out. It's white noise. And then as everybody's scrambling for the next outrage, then the oligarchs and the cons, the grifters, the sociopaths, the abusers, the anti-democratic schemers can get away with whatever it is they want to get away with. And there is a kind of national trauma that is happening. People are literally beat up psychologically, and it's affecting a lot of people physically. And so when I hear you say the word optimism, I'm like, what? I mean, I want optimism, Aaron. I need optimism. I don't feel optimism. So what are you talking about? Take me to the light. Push me into the light, Aaron. What are you thinking?
It's worth remembering that as much of a clown show we are currently watching, there have been clowns, there have been wars, there has been violence, and somehow, some way that we've been able to make incremental progress. And just right now, the current administration is, I think at this point in a presidency, having the lowest approval ratings in our records of these things. That has to count for something, and saying, hey, there's a lot of buyer's remorse about this most recent major election, and that showed at the polls pretty strongly. Does that mean things are going to be changing over? Probably not anytime soon, especially depending on your opinions about what the Senate is going to be accomplishing today. But we see that um, we've done stupid things before and somehow realized, hey, we need to make some sort of change here. We have just enough ability as humans to notice when things are going wrong and just enough ability to try to correct things. The biggest issues that we are going to have is if we do get upset at everything, that we aren't able to think out what our next step can be to make things better. Because are you familiar with the concept of the wisdom of the crowds?
No, I am not. Educate me.
All right. So this was an interesting demonstration. It was published in Nature right around 1900, and this exemplar is used in a bunch of other cases as well. But it was a very simple thing. Go to the county fair, and they'll often have some sort of game where people are supposed to guess, like, how heavy is this pig? How heavy is this cow? How many beans in the jar? That sort of thing. And any individual guess is probably not all that great. And of course, some of them are just going to be wildly off. Oh, that pig over there, that's 1 pound. Oh, that pig over there, it's 10,000 pounds. It's like, no, it's not that. But the amazing thing is this: if you take everyone on their own individually, not checking with each other, and take all of their guesses for how many beans are in the jar, how many pounds was the cow, take that average, and it's extremely close to what the real value is. So even the wildly wrong guesses, averaged out, gets you actually closer to what the truth is. So it tells me that, hey, even when we're being crazy on the fringes, collectively we can actually get close to things. But, with a notable caveat, you have to make sure that people are not talking to each other, influencing each other. Then that's when you get the madness of crowds. So I ask us to take a minute, take a breather, don't find out what your marching orders are from whatever your major news site is or your favorite blogger or what have you, and try to think for yourself what your own opinion about these facts are. And that collective individualistic thought and knowledge combined together, I think, can make the crowd just 1% more wise than it would otherwise.
I think of that Men in Black quote from the first film when he's like, a person is smart, people are dumb. Like, what's that line? Never underestimate the stupidity of people in large groups. I do worry a little bit about not just the
Yes.
crowds, but the mobs. And they're stuck in
Yeah.
disinformation silos or bigotry silos. I mean, you and I are watching in real time these celebrated bigotry and cruelty against our fellow human beings. And there's a sense of a common enemy. They are rallied up. They've decided maybe this is patriotism. They scare
Mhm.
me. And I'm worried. I'm worried about what they're
Yeah.
capable of. And then was it Martin Luther King Jr. that once said, riots are the language of the unheard. So if you
Mhm.
see the Supreme Court there's been a hostile takeover and it's been neutral. The Congress is neutralized. If you see, I mean, the White House obviously is completely gone. If people feel like there are masked police officers in the streets and their health care is going away and the grocery prices are skyrocketing, et cetera, there may be a housing crash and they feel like, will there be a storming of the Bastille? Is there going
Mhm.
to be a time when there is a cultural explosion because no other recourse seems possible? And then what does that look like? I don't know. I That's the kind of stuff that wakes me up at 3 in the morning and keeps me up for the
Yeah.
rest of the morning. You probably think about that as well. What if is a scary question in these times? No.
Yeah. Mind you, though, the economic situation, the disaster that seemed to be coming from Washington, it also sounds like what the situation was in 1932 when the stock market had completely collapsed. Uh, there's the Dust Bowl happening in your part of the country, if memory serves,
Mhm.
and there was, a lot of anger. There was violence. There was, like, for example, the veterans marching on Washington to try to get their pay for their World War I service and actually being pushed back by the more recent army. So literally, veterans being shot at by active soldiers. That was no good. But the country didn't storm the Bastille. It did a regime change and did some of the most important progressive legislation, well, in a century. So
So
we at
the
least have
pendulum
some
swing
history.
is,
Yeah.
in many cases, a natural reaction to the action. I mean, I see
Yeah.
that. I do think there will be a course correction. I think the big question is how much damage will have been done between now and
Yeah.
then, and how long
Yeah.
will it
But
take to rebuild? How long is it going to take to peel all that gold shit off the outside of the Oval Office? Have you seen that? He's turning the entire
oh
White
yeah.
House into a cheesecake factory. Just wacky. Just wacky.
Well,
So,
consider this. When the producers that would produce the show, what was the show that Trump hosted? I'm forgetting its name all of a sudden. The
The
Apprentice.
Apprentice.
Yes, originally they went to Trump Tower thinking that they were going to use his space there, his office there, and they realized this place looks like shit. It's falling apart. They had to create a studio to actually, make it look like Trump is actually the smart businessman because his actual space was showing some wear and tear. And I suspect, given that mind behind the process, it's probably also a shit job there. So I'm thinking, all right, just tear down the plaster and we can restart and make this better. Just cover the Resolute desk as we're repainting the room. I think that sort of thing is an easy fix. What happened to the East Wing? Obviously, that's a much more historic, grievous thing. And again, it's a building. We can rebuild it. We can make it faster, stronger. We have the technology.
I fantasize that when the day comes, they'll dismantle all that gaudy ballroom stuff, maybe resource out all of the materials for something useful. You can take that bug and make it a feature. You can probably turn that on its ear. It is fixable.
Yeah.
Um, Tony
Well, the easiest
Schwartz
fix for
was.
that ballroom is actually, at least this is the joke. For the ballroom, next president comes in and they rename it the Barack Obama Ballroom. Problem
Oh, I
solved.
love it. I love it. Yeah. Well, I had mentioned, and I'm going to get to you in just a second, Nate. I see you there on waiting and on hold. Tony Schwartz was the ghostwriter for Donald Trump for his best-selling book called The Art of the Deal. Now, this is
Mhm.
ostensibly the book that cemented Donald Trump in the public mind as a master genius business person. And Tony and Trump made money. But whenever 2016 came around and it became a serious race for the presidency, Tony Schwartz came forward and he said, "Okay, I got to fess up. We were selling books when I ghost wrote The Art of the Deal. I went to his office and mostly he was sitting around doing dumb shit, and I just wrote things down. And much of the book is fiction and danger. He will, if he's elected, he'll never give up the chair. He's danger. He was blowing the whistle pre
Yeah.
2016 election, and nobody listened or no one cared. And, we fall in love with an idea. I think this is a very human tendency. It explains, I think, a lot of religious belief. People, when they are shown that the Bible falls apart upon any scrutiny, and they know there's no evidence for Jesus as the Christ, the supernatural super being, but they fell in love with the idea of Jesus, and it gets baked in and it's hard to let that go. The experiment I use is Mother Teresa. Mother Teresa was not a good person. People flip
Mm.
out. They
Yeah.
don't know anything about it. Like, I will say, name three things about Mother Teresa that have nothing to do with the fact that she was a Catholic nun. Just give me three things. Nobody has been able to do so, but they have an emotional reaction because she sort of became their grandmother in their heart. They fell in love with the idea. And I think that's a big mountain to climb too. When you find someone has an attachment, they almost treat it like they would a beloved child. And if you come after the idea, then the fight, flight, or freeze kicks in. Has that been your experience?
There's definitely truth to that. And when it comes to especially the conversations with individuals, I don't want to say you walk on eggshells, but the way you progress is not on the attack. The way forward is dialogue and letting the person think about their own positions, being Socratic as much as possible. Sometimes that's difficult, and sometimes I feel like I also have to, step up for myself. It's like, no, you just said something completely false. No, you're not going to say that about me. But in general, once you make people feel that they're on the defensive, all the guardrails go up. Everything to protect the bubble goes up. You have to let people do their own deflating of their bubble in many ways.
When I speak to people, I like to use the word I. So instead of saying, you're wrong about Mother Teresa, she was not a good person, I will say, I myself used to think she was a grandmotherly saint, but when I was getting into a lot of the specifics about the things that had happened during her life and even after her death, I became really concerned and I was grieved about that. So I did some more digging, and the stuff I discovered was fascinating. It's amazing when you don't go at you or them, but you're like, well, I took this journey and I found some stuff, and I myself have some real reservations and problems. It does tend to keep people from being on their back foot. And I'm a big fan of SE Street epistemology. I see Nate on the switchboard here.
Mm.
Aaron, you want to give it a shot since Nate's been
Yeah,
so patient to hang out
yeah,
with us, calling in from
absolutely.
South Carolina. Welcome to the show, Nate. You are on with Aaron and Seth. Can you hear the sound of our voices?
Can you hear the sound of my voice?
It is tonally
Indeed, we can.
amazing. Yes. What's on your mind, Nate?
It's amazing.
Yes.
Big fan
It
of
is.
both of you guys.
Thank you.
Hey, listen, I'm really tired because I've been writing all night and day. So if I ramble a bit, forgive me. But I was really inspired to call in by what you guys were talking about up at the front of the show there. Now, I was raised in a hyper evangelical, fundamentalist, right wing, independent, fundamental Baptist sort of thing. Far to the right of like even Matt Dillahunty and folks like that, basically spend the night. And so as a result, I became pretty obsessed with how people came to believe the crazy things that they believe. I just got my master's degree, working on my PhD now, and I am very interested in, if you guys have heard of Baudrillard, he was the guy that they based the Matrix movies on philosophically. And he was concerned. I keep hearing noises. Can you guys still hear me?
You're good. You're
Hear
good.
you
Keep
fine.
going.
Okay. So he was saying that basically, like, the ways that we think about the world are becoming increasingly divorced from reality. He talked about simulacra and simulation. That's where they got the idea for the Matrix. To where, like, the symbols we think in tropes and metaphors and symbols, like, are completely divorcing from reality. So what I'm working on right now, it seems like, and I'm doing this heavy research and working on this and trying to offer you guys some hope. Our political myths right now seem to be changing the genre that they're a part of. We used to have this, like, the enemy at the gate and the rod at the top and all these kind of stories. And right now it seems like they are changing genre into a really hyper-spiritualized one. Where, it's the battle of good and evil. It's no longer left and right. It's the battle of good and evil. So the best way that people relate to the ideologies, as far as viral memes and things like that goes, is fear and hate, right? Those are the memes that spread the most. You attach something to fear and hate, it'll spread better. So what we've also found is that awe also spreads, things that invoke feelings of awe. And one of the best ways to create awe in people is to stimulate a sense of cooperative independence, being part of this big, vast thing that is humanity, right? So there's another kind of story that we can start to tell that can also go viral. And this is where you have an ethic of complexity, and you turn the quote unquote, I hate to use the word sin, but you turn sin into like simplistic thinking instead. A good example of this would be like the Truth and Reconciliation Commission in South Africa. These are really good ways of muting the effects of these things. So I'm working on this right now. I'm in talks with a publisher. We'll see where it goes. But there are ways around this, you guys. So I just wanted to offer some hope. That's all.
You have any thoughts on awe as maybe a social glue or a source of optimism? I'm still asking my co-host. I know he's the smart one. I'm the guy who flaps his gums and fills the spaces. Aaron, let's talk about awe. Do you see that as maybe a rallying point for collectivist values, community, and I don't know, conversation, inspiration?
I'll say this much. I think that at least worked for me, because this is going to sound a little bit strange, but I knew at a pretty young age I was interested in science, and I wasn't even a teenager when I realized I wanted to specifically focus my science career in physics and astronomy. But it was only late in my high school career that I discovered Carl Sagan, and this was even a couple years after he died. But weirdly enough, I was working, while still in high school, I was working as a co-op at the local General Motors plant in my hometown. And one of the office folks that I was chatting with there, who's 30 years older than me, said, "Hey, I hear you like this science stuff. I have these VHS copies of Carl Sagan's Cosmos." And he let me borrow those. And when I discovered Sagan's ability to just turn the English language and use it to truly make science awesome in the purest way, boy, was that powerful for me. Especially the way that he described the story of Johannes Kepler and the awe that came along with this person who thought he figured out the entire universe from base geometry, but also was so committed to following evidence that he was willing to actually abandon that and his deepest beliefs because he wanted to know what was true, even when his predictions were just off a couple arc seconds, or arc minutes, I should say. Those stories, especially told the way he told them, absolutely glued me to loving science even more than I had. So awe, at least for me, was powerful. How to do that in mass? Nate, tell us how we do that, because I don't know enough about this, and it sounds like it's where your focus is.
How do we do that en masse? Well, I mean, that your guess is as good as mine, to be perfectly honest with you. But I mean, so there are. Well, I think. Wow, your example was really good. My example, and I'm kind of writing this part right now, so you caught me a little off guard. But my example right now, the base of what I was writing was when I got out of my hyper-fundamentalist upbringing, and I was plunged headfirst into the dismal despair of, existential angst, and there is no meaning to anything. When I discovered that you could be inspired by mystery and this almost mystical, I hate to use these words, almost mystical sense of what the hell is going on out here. Let's work together. Let's put our heads together. Let's be skeptical and curious enough to remain humble and honest. That was so chillingly inspiring to me that I could not help but just jump on. I'm never going back. Because I'm swimming in this mysterious ocean of wondrous mystery. I don't know what the hell's going on, but it's fascinating. And I think if we can get people to value mystery in that way and value the challenge of holding contradiction together, which you have to do in a democracy, it becomes, you can start to see what sin means in a paradigm like that. It's just a matter of telling these stories over and over and over again of communities that come together and bind together to, go over adversity. You take away this battle of good and evil thing, and you replace it with this benevolent community that's cooperative and interdependent. Do that enough times, and keep telling those stories faithfully. And I think that you will start to see some displacement. I don't know that all will ever be as good a spreader as fear and anger, because information goes through your amygdala first, right? But if you can trigger your amygdala to react against, eschewing people and shooing them away and saying no because you're not thinking well enough, and you become afraid of being a lightweight thinker. That's where I'm trying to go with it. I hope it works. I have no idea, but I guess we'll find out.
Good stuff. Anything else for... No. You did absolutely terrific. Anything else you want to discuss before I move on? I see a couple of people behind you on the switchboard. You all good?
I'm all good. I had some other stuff, but it's for a totally different subject. So I'll call back another time. But I do want to talk to you, Aaron. But we'll talk later.
All right.
Everybody wants to talk to Aaron. Yeah. I want to talk to you, Aaron. Yeah, you're the reason I'm dialing in, Aaron. Yeah. All right. No, I'm just kidding. Both of you hit on something that I want to park on for just a second. I was the same as you. So Cosmos released a PBS in 1980. Now I'm eyeball deep in fundy Bible literalist Christianity. I don't know why my parents let me watch it, because it was all about the Big Bang and evolution and that kind of stuff. And so for some reason, though, they allowed us to watch it. And yet they loomed. They were right over here. And so when he would say something that was not biblical or not in the book of Genesis or contradicted their doctrine, they would jump in and say, well, that's not true, actually. Well, no, he's wrong on that. But they let it play, right? But, I never really got a proper introduction to Sagan. And I came out of my faith around 2008. And so I didn't discover Carl Sagan's writings, his voice. I didn't really get it and take a proper deep dive until long after he had passed away. And it was magical. The storyteller of science, that guy could, I got it. The awe and wonder of being alive for this blip, this finite moments, to feel the sun, to be able to generate a sense of purpose, to know I'm part of a universe that may not care that I exist, but it's okay because I care and I'm generating my own path forward and happiness and loving and making memories and just seizing the day and blah, blah, blah. I mean, I literally it came alive in me. And I have found that I think if we're going to change the world, we have to change it through stories. If I walk in and I have a list of data points, and I say, all right, here, it's like some of I'm sure you've had them, very clinical science teachers. You walked in under the white hot fluorescent light, and they're just dryly going through a bunch of sentences that have really no emotional resonance with you. You're not feeling anything about what you're thinking about. But when you can get someone to sit forward and feel something about what they're thinking about, there's a connection that takes place. I produced a video, I'm going to link it in the chat, called The Story of You. And I used Dr. Dan Batcheldor, who's an astrophysicist. He works with NASA, and he's got an amazing story. And I said, I want to talk about our connection to the singularity and the universe and the elements in the universe and the fact that it is so wondrous that we are here and breathing and all those things. I want to do that. And I want you to help me as best I can, kind of clumsily, get the science right. And I put together like a 14-minute piece called The Story of You. Now, if you're watching after the fact and you don't see it in the chat, just go to The Thinking Atheist, The Story of You. Just put it in your YouTube search and it will pop up. And what it does is it's a journey through the Big Bang to today, but it's the story of it. Not just here's an element and here's an element and these elements combined and there were stars and they exploded and blah, blah, blah. But it's emotive and there's music and there's all these production tools that cause you to lean forward into it. And I feel like, Aaron, that if we're going to go out and change minds, I think we have to use stories instead of just dry data points. Talk to me. What's your take on that take?
Stories and conversation, because one of the books I got behind me, it's an old book, but it's from a reformer in education by the name of John Dewey. And one of his important books was called Democracy in Education. And it's also become kind of like this launching point for a lot of modern education theorists as well. And a big part of it is that education isn't the accumulation of facts, it is a social process. You ultimately learn and learn deeply and learn broadly by having it as a communal exercise. The teacher at the front of the room just passing out the facts and the homework and the quizzes doesn't produce knowledge in the same way as the students working with each other, questioning, exploring, and seeing for themselves what's happening. I used to teach high school, so I would try to, of course, bring that into my teaching. Sometimes I just have to do things that just, what am I going to do to get their attention? So I'm going to teach about electricity and magnetism. I pull out a cattle prod. I have to show them it works. Zap, zap myself. Yes, it hurts. Yes, it works. Or I want to show, hey, here's the interesting things that happen with light when you pass it through a single slit. But, passing it through a single slit is boring. Let me pull out one of my hairs and put it in front of the laser, and you can see that you get an interference pattern with my hair there. And if you measure it, you can figure out how thick my hair is. But by them seeing that I am literally pulling out my own hair, just these little things, to get their attention and make them focus and say, what is going on? Why is my teacher this crazy? That focus and that thought, and then of course have the students explore what is happening. In some subjects that's easier than others. In literature, conversation is, I think, pretty easy. We read the story and we try to understand the story communally. In physics, you could do labs, but sometimes those can become even more dry than the homework itself. Depends on how the lab is set up. But the exploration in groups, in conversation, that's, I think, how knowledge is really produced, how it grows, and what we have to teach, how to teach. And good teachers know this. And just sometimes it's hard to teach that way because at the end of the year, it's a standardized test score that tells you if you're going to be hired for the next year. That makes things a bit difficult. But I feel like I'm going off on a bit of a tangent. But you are right.
I'm tracking, and I love these longer form shows because you and I can chat. I will get to you, Jay. Hang on just a second. I learned about the Civil War in high school. This battle took place on this date, and they were fighting over this piece of land. And, this person was the general. And I remember, and a lot of my history classes were taught by gym teachers. You know what I'm saying? Like oh yeah, well, we need someone to teach history. Okay, get the football coach. He happens to have had a degree there. And it just didn't connect. And then I watched what remains my favorite documentary series of all time, Ken Burns' The Civil War, 10-part series. And I got it. I got it. I took a deep dive into, I transported back in time. And I was like, I understand now. And more importantly, I care. I really get it. I thought I cared before, but I really, really care. And I think that type of storytelling, that's part of, I think, how we change the world. And maybe it's how we generate a little optimism. Possibly. Jay has been so patient. He is dialing in from New York. He is a theist. Is that right, Jay? You a believer in God? And which God?
Hey, what's up? How you doing? I'm kind of I'm kind of searching still, right? I'm a theist because I do believe in something more, but I don't seek it through scripture. I understand that science is real and science is something we need to listen to and respect. And I do feel that whatever is indeed out there is something that has to exist alongside science. So what I do is I try to see where science still has questions in areas that could possibly lead to more.
Would that be more of a deism? I don't get hung up on labels, but if you haven't landed on a specific God with a proper name, but you think there's a higher power out there, that probably falls into more of a nebulous, larger umbrella deism, I would think. I don't know. Does that track for you, Jay?
Maybe, right? But I hesitate to put labels, right, because I write nothing off. The reason why I question scripture and don't like necessarily just, buy that the way it is because I see questionable things behind scripture. So I always feel like for every great lie, there has to be a lot of truth. So I don't know how much of those books are true, but I do understand that the origins of the books and, some of the information I find me personally a bit questionable, like the fact that they got the order of creation in Genesis wrong, in my opinion. Like those are things that make me question it. It makes me see the human being behind the book per se, but that's not to say that there isn't something to it, right? So I don't like to just throw things out, right? I like to keep an open mind across all around the board. So this is why I don't necessarily say this. I say someone's still searching, right?
Okay, that's
And
fine.
I
I
do
don't care.
feel like,
Before I
yeah, and
pass
I
it
do
on
feel,
to Aaron, hang
sorry.
on, brother, just a second. I want to go back before we get too far off into the weeds here. So you
Yes.
said something along the lines of if let's say the Bible contains some big lies, then that follows that it must also contain big truths. Did I hear that right?
Well, I mean, in any situation, not just the Bible, I think in any situation, for every great lie, there's a lot of strong truths to try to pass over a lie. Like the bigger the lie, the likelier there's a lot of truth in it to like try to pass it over you. You see, like you're not gonna believe a outrageous lie, but you might fall for it if it's enclosed in a whole lot of truth, you know?
I think it depends on the lie. There are outrageous, outlandish lies, and I think there are perhaps even the more insidious ones that contain just enough truth to allow them to slither into the public consciousness. Aaron, do you want to talk about truth and lies and gods and everything, life, the universe, and everything? What do you think, brother?
Yeah, I mean, let me take this to a different context outside of religion and see if we agree on this, Jay. Um, I am in a happy marriage and I have a lot of trust with my wife. But if she tells me she loves me and I find out actually she's been cheating on me and she has actually no love for me, what's the great truth about her lying to me about our relationship? Do you think there's some great truth when she tells me something false like that to my face?
I mean, it's kind of hard to understand people. Sometimes people do hurtful things, but that don't mean they hate you. You know what I'm saying? Like it could still be true. Two things could be true. She probably could have done that to you and hurt you, and probably went through a lapse of judgment, or maybe just
Well,
feels
hang
different.
on.
That don't
Hey,
mean she
Jay,
don't love you, though. You know?
would this work as if she had betrayed him? The fact that she had lied about it would have revealed a larger truth. There were problems in the marriage, that she was lonely or bored or, or got sucked into a relationship that was unhealthy. Or are you saying the action
Yeah.
itself would be revelatory?
That, yeah, it's obviously an indicator that things ain't good. You get what I'm saying? And not to say that things will ever get good again. I'm just saying that, you know, there are so many intangibles that come with that act. You get what I'm saying? So like I said, a lot of truths mixed in with the lie. The lie was she was cheating on you. But the truths, a lot of other truths engulf that lie too. You get what I'm saying? So like
Well,
Okay.
the lie is ultimately detrimental. You understand? I get it. And that's why we
yeah,
have
let's
to be
pinball it
able to
back to
use
Aaron
discernment.
real quick. I jumped all in there and I want to sit back
Yeah.
and listen for a while. Go ahead, brother.
I'm going to try to track, but before I go in there, I want to make sure everyone is clear. My wife and I have nothing but happiness between each other, so I don't want to
Yeah,
imply
no doubt.
anything like
Yeah,
that. I just want to make sure that's absolutely
I
Yeah.
clear,
get it.
having this recorded on the internet, especially.
No, I've done the same
Yeah,
thing.
for
I'll
But
talk
sure.
about a
yeah,
hypothetical with Natalie, and afterwards
yeah,
I'm like, "We're good." And you have to do that
Yeah,
online.
for
So
sure.
yes, you're clear. You've done
yes,
your due diligence.
yes. I'm also reminded because I
Definitely.
literally see photos of us from our wedding right behind me, so it's extra in my memory to be thoughtful to this. Um,
Okay.
But when it
That's
comes to
awesome.
getting to the truth, Jay, is it the lie that reveals the
Yeah.
truth, or is it that you actually have to get around the lie? You have to get past the lie. to get to the truth? Does the lie reveal the truth, or does it actually impede you to getting to the truth?
I mean, it could be a little bit of both. But the reason why I even carry that outlook when it comes to the book is because, you know, it shows me like I sense the human being behind that, you know, down to the desires, down to some of the commands, down to, you know, just some of the stories. I can sense the human desires behind some of those passages that, you know, although they come across as something divine, I sense a human's desires behind it. Like, for example, circumcision. What would an almighty God that's capable of creating galaxies care about circumcision? What would an almighty God that's capable of creating galaxies need that carcass fed to him? They may not, right? Like that almighty God may not, right? But you know who will, though? You know who really will? A hungry tribe member who's convinced you that, you know, give this to me, you apologize to God, now we eat. You understand
I'm
what
a
I'm
little
saying? Now we
upset
eat.
that we're using foreskins and eat in the same paragraph. Can we? We're going to need to bounce past that. Aaron, did you want to
I'm
jump in
just saying.
again, my friend? I'm sorry. Circumcision and
So,
food. I was having trouble.
yeah,
Go ahead.
Sorry about
Go ahead.
that.
Go ahead.
no, it's,
Good.
yeah. Jay, I think I'm tracking with you in that if we are trying to see how the texts come about, how the stories come about, and seeing the creation process for those are absolutely fascinating things. And it's one of the reasons I even do biblical studies. It's not because I want to know what the truth is about God. I'm exploring this in the same way I explore other world mythologies. How did they come up with that story? What's the story behind the story? And those things are interesting. However, knowing the story behind the story doesn't get me to the truth about whether a God exists, does anything, or cares about anything. So I would ask you, Jay, what is it that we would do to figure out one way or the other that there is some sort of supernatural being out there?
Unfortunately, the one answer to that question might be to, you know, die and experience it, because life is just that, an experience. And even our finest machines, our biggest hadron colliders, our greatest telescopes, the Louvre yet to come, you know, no matter what, we will always hit a wall, because there are just certain things that us human beings, we're just locked into our five senses. We're going to always hit a wall. And technology can only tell us but so much. At a certain point in time, we can only experience. We can only experience, because there's things that exist. There are processes that are happening in what I call absolute reality, you know? Maybe not here in our universe, but all around, you know, dark holes, they say wormholes, portals, and all of that stuff. All that is happening. Dark matter, dark energy, all these forces, right? We don't know the ins and outs of all of that. Consciousness itself is an emergent property of the brain, something that evolved over time here on this planet, but, you know, it interacts with the electromagnetic forces out there. Consciousness is something that's highly complicated. Sentience is highly complicated. And it's not far-fetched to me that in a world where we already demonstrate the recyclement, if you will, of our physical matter, I think it's a process called entropy, where we have things in our physical makeup now that come from people that passed years ago before us. That's already evidence of a recyclement process in existence here. So it's
Okay,
not
hang on.
far-fetched to me.
So what I'm hearing, Jay,
Yeah.
before I pinball back again to Aaron, is there's a ton of mystery. Matter can neither be created or destroyed, is the claim, blah, blah, blah. We are all made of stardust. We are conscious beings, and there are some questions that we almost certainly will not know the answer to. up to the moment that we die, and maybe not even then. So,
Yep.
in your mind, you think there must be something or someone out there, given how much we do not know. Is that close?
That's, I think it's just so much mystery, right? It's very complex out there. It's
I get it. I get it. Mystery, complexity. I get it. Where I think I'm going is this.
Yeah.
All right. I want to come back to the Bible. Did I derail you, Aaron? Forgive me. I hope I didn't.
Go for it. Go for it.
So you know the Bible is written by flawed human beings who had an agenda and weren't benefiting from what we'll call today's knowledge economy. They didn't know what the stars were in many cases. They didn't know what germs existed. They didn't know what germs were, right? They may have thought epilepsy was a demonic attack, right? They were not, they didn't have our benefit of understanding how things worked. On top of that, in that type of cultural ignorance, they wrote about things like giants and 1,000-year-old humans and blood magic and virgins who were impregnated by ghosts and all of these types of things. So, yeah, could we find some nuggets of philosophical information, some poetry, maybe even some true stuff, accidentally, or maybe these myths took place in real locations, whatever. But don't you think that the Bible would then be overall an unreliable source for any truths with a capital T? Aren't there better sources out there? We have good reason to distrust the Bible, do we not?
Well, if you go by that, yeah, and it might just be as they say plagiarisms from previous theistic texts like the Illuminati and stuff like that. I don't know, right? But that one book being wrong, or any other book being wrong, or all the books being wrong, in my opinion, still doesn't disqualify the possibility for there being something more. You understand? I think
I
that
don't think Aaron and I would disagree that we don't know what we don't know, and we got to keep a relatively open mind. I don't know. Am I mischaracterizing that, Aaron? I mean, I don't say there could be no God. I just say I haven't seen any evidence, and therefore I don't believe. What's your take?
Let's put it this way. People being wrong about God or about God wants can't in itself disprove God. It would just disprove that such a culture had some sort of special access. On the other hand, if we are positing a God that wants to commune with humans and he can't seem to rise above the fever imaginations of random collections of tribes and nations, is not a good communicator God. That's at least evidence against that kind of God. If instead the God that does exist, assuming there is one, is just completely indifferent to humans, it would be consistent with that lack of evidence. But again, if that God is indifferent to us, how interesting is it to us in return? Ultimately, though, I look at it this way. God is supposed to be something supernatural. And every single time we have tried to investigate claims of the supernatural, they either come up short or come up strongly negative. While when we posit the natural, we make progress, we make supercomputers, we make the modern world. Of those two, one is, clearly showing a winning track record. So if we're still to posit the supernatural thing, even though every time we've posited it, it fails, even if it's logically possible, why are we actually holding out hope for it and thinking it's at least plausible to believe when it keeps failing over and over again? Let's put it this way. I'm not a betting person, so I never go to horse betting. But if I were to look at the records of a horse and say, hey, this horse has run in 10,000 races and came in last every time, is it possible that the next race that horse will come in first place? Yes, it is possible. Is that where I should put my money? Again, I may not be a betting person, but I at least know what not to bet on. Would you agree with that, Jay?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would probably still place like a little $10 bet on it just in case, because you just never know, right? But you know, like
I mean,
it's all about
the
the person.
payout would be huge, wouldn't it, Jay?
Yeah, that's what I'm
The
saying.
odds are
$10 for
extreme.
nothing. Like,
You just
I would do
described
it.
how a
You
lot
know
of
what I mean?
people practice Christianity, by the way. I'm
Yeah.
just saying,
I mean,
you know, I'm gonna
my
throw a
thing
10
is
spot
is good.
there.
Yeah,
Okay, all right.
why
Yeah.
not? Why you never know.
Well, I can give you a why not when it comes to betting on horses versus betting on gods. Remember, also many of the other god concepts have the idea of punishment if you believe incorrectly. So it's not only the
Mm.
case are you going to bet on which is the right horse, but if you bet wrong, the other horse is going to come, and because this horse is also magical, is going to hold a gun and take you out. So you'd have to really put your bet on the horse that you really think is going to win, rather than just try out this one, because no, the other horses are going to gang up on you and do you in. So on that case, Jay, do you bet on the horse that's probably going to lose, knowing that not only are you going to probably lose $10, but you are going to be on the newspaper as being the one who was shot by other horses?
I mean, I'm I'm a risk taker. You know what I'm saying? So if you're asking me personally, you understand what I'm saying? Like, I could tell you the logics, what you should logically possibly do, but I don't think logically sometimes. You know what I'm saying? So I'll probably take the bet. That's what I'm saying.
Hey,
Like,
Jay, before we move on, I think I agree with Aaron's point. If there is a deity of any kind, but that deity has left us fumbling in the dark, we can't agree with even the apologists, even the experts, quote unquote experts, can't agree on the basics of any religion. And with potentially heaven and hell in the balance and so much suffering in this world, so many people looking up into the cosmos in times of need or just curiosity, begging for an answer to the question. And that deity has not done anything but leave us to have a conversation online where we say, well, you got to leave yourself open because we just don't know and maybe we can't know. That tells me that deity is not interested, really interested in me at all, anyway. And for that reason, I'm not all that interested in the deity. You know, that deity left us all out hanging. That deity didn't care enough to solve the mystery, to answer the questions, to be personally involved. It's certainly not a father god. And in my mind, it makes the question more academic. Is there something out there? Probably not. If there was, he sure doesn't care about me. So I'm going to live my life as if there is no God anyway, because that's just kind of where I'm stuck. Does that make any sense for you, Jay?
yeah, I mean, that's the thing. That's experience. That's consciousness. That's life happening. That's what you are. That's what I am. So it would make sense. You know, I doubt the computer knows everything about the people in the factory that produced it. You know what I'm saying? So it would have to be told about it. You know, and we're not told about it. You know, we just happen. We just turn on. You know what I'm saying? And
Yeah. Okay. But if we were created with an innate curiosity and a yearning to know, a desperate need to know by not just a computer maker, but a parent, a divine parent. And that parent then not only didn't communicate with us, but allowed us to literally bounce off each other in confusion and pain. That's a problem. Does that track with you?
mm, I mean, I could see that viewpoint here from our limited human perspective, but I do feel that, you know, absolute reality is stranger than your strangest science fiction that you can ever obtain. You know, any science fiction you could ever point to, actual absolute reality that's actually happening now is far stranger than that.
Jay, I'm
And
not talking about something that is strange. I'm talking about something that, in this case, probably is moral or immoral. I don't think it's moral to
well,
create a yearning creature desperate for answers and often great suffering and then playing a disappearing deadbeat dad. And so that to me it can't be explained away with the mysteries of the divine. To me, it just sounds like you're an absentee parent. Aaron, I'm going to give you the final word here, my friend. Do you have any thoughts before we wrap it up with Jay? I know I've got a few other people queued. I want to make sure we're good stewards of their time as well. Were you good? What do you think?
Just last thing, because mentioning that reality might be beyond our imaginations or our best science fictions. If I can at least, though, recommend some mind-bending fiction, science fiction, look at the works of Olaf Stapledon, in particular, his story called Starbaker. It is, let's put it this way, not only is it science fiction, but it specifically pissed off, who wrote Narnia? All of a sudden the name is escaping. C.S. Lewis.
C.S. Lewis.
C.S. Lewis said this, like, this is pure Gnosticism, and just hated the book, but it is mind-bending meditation on the creation of universe and universes, heavens and hells by the ultimate sort of creator, and it will be at least as mind-bending as mixing Ezekiel and Revelation together. And
That
that's
sounds
without
like
the
a
drugs.
trip, Jay. That sounds like a trip.
I'm going to check that. Yeah, no,
All
I'm
right.
definitely going to check that. I'm going to eat a nice, something nice, and I'm going to watch that, and it's going to put me in
All
a
right.
nice mood.
Appreciate you
That's a
calling
fact.
the show out of New York,
care,
Jay.
fellas.
Be safe out there. We'll talk again,
So,
okay?
have a great one. Bye-bye.
All right, see you later. Sorry, I'm still feeling guilt about the foreskin and food comment from 10 minutes ago. It kind of scarred me. I mean, I would read that story if I was reading the Old Testament. David went out with his armies and slayed 200 Philistines and took their foreskins. And then one of his generals said, "Are you going to eat that?" I mean, if I'd heard that in Sunday school, I might have paid a little more attention. Let's talk to, I know I've got some theists queued up here, but I've got an atheist who has been on the line for almost 45 minutes, and his name is Seth, dialing us out of Minnesota. Hey, Seth, how you doing?
Hi, Seth. I've actually talked to you before on your personal solo podcast.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. My dad was born in Minnesota. We used to go up there every summer and fishing for walleye and northern pike, It was a big amount of fun. Yeah. We literally, everybody in my dad's family was Fargo, even though Fargo is not Minnesota, but it was always like,
oh, no.
Oh, yeah, we went up there, and I'll tell you, the guy said it was going to be darn cold tomorrow, but he didn't say darn, if you know what I mean, and I think you do. That's what he did, Seth. So anyway,
Oh, my gosh.
what's going on, Seth? What's on your mind?
So what I wanted to focus on was, since the topic seems to be about deconstruction, in my journey to deconstruct, I felt, after being a Christian for many years, the thing that really helped me deconstruct was not being able to understand the Bible at all. I struggled so mightily being able to read it and understand it the slightest. It was like it almost seemed like almost pure gobbledygook at times. And either, like, when I was going to church, I would listen to a sermon and it was like almost like background white noise. It just went in and out, and I couldn't latch on to anything. And I never really talked to anybody afterwards. It just was like, this is an activity I'm going to. That was all it was for the longest time. And it wasn't till I got much, much older that I finally said, why am I not paying attention to this? This is part of the whole thing. I need to try and actually dive into this more. So I started really trying to read, and I just went, what is this? None of this makes sense. And what didn't help was, like, the folk, especially the last church that I went to, the insistence on using only one translation. And I was reading the Bible that I was given as a gift a while before that was a different Bible. And it was like a study Bible that was supposed to, like, help you understand it, and it was still struggling. So I was like, okay, maybe listening to the sermon will help me better. But it was like so why? I'm just like going, why do I have to listen to? I started thinking to myself, why do I have to go every Sunday and listen to the sermon to understand what I'm reading? It's just like, what am I doing?
Yeah, sure. So the Bible is nonsensical, and it was part of your deconstruction journey. Did you have a question for Aaron or myself today?
I guess what do you think? I guess I didn't really have a question so much as like just commenting on how difficult the Bible was. It just feels like, I think one of the biggest things I think that I saw around me was believers. I think why that people say that people don't read the Bible is because of that. Do you think that's true? Is that like that people just don't read the Bible on their own because they feel like they need another person to even latch onto any of it?
Hey, Seth, let Aaron and I kind of chew on this one post call, and we'll camp out here for just a minute, and maybe you can get the answer you're looking for off air. Would that be okay?
Sure.
I appreciate you very much. Thanks for the call. It's a little bit of a challenge when someone's like, well, what do you think they're thinking when they could be any one of, what's the ratio in Christianity on this planet, 2.5 billion people, something like that. Did you want to speak to any of this, the nonsensical nature of the Bible and some people discovering it as part of their journey out?
Let me just give a little bit of my own history with it. When I was still a believer from a Catholic background, I thought, okay, this is supposed to be the sacred text. I should at least read it. And I made the mistake of trying to read the book like I'm used to reading the books, starting at the beginning and trying to progress through to the end. You start with Genesis, you get to the begats. I can't even keep my eyes open. Fundamentally, this book is not written like we moderns write books with beginnings, middles, and ends. It is a collection. It is at best a library with several committees of editors over the centuries that have moved around, messed around, added, subtracted, modified things. And the only way I ever had the Bible start to become interesting is when scholars we're listening to were actually describing, here's how you can basically figure out where the stories come from in some sort of like scientific detective way. That at least clicked for me. Because yeah, this is a product of the past, and the past is a foreign country. They do things different there. The customs are different. It is confusing, and all the more so if you're also doing with a translation with 500-year-old English, if that happened to be the version of the Bible you had. Because quite honestly, I look at the King James Version, and I'm just like, my English isn't this good anymore. I don't know what I just read.
Was it, what was the book that Mark Twain called Chloroform in Print? Sometimes that's how
That was
I
the Book
feel
of
about
Mormon.
Is that Book of Mormon? The
Yep.
the Bible. I was the same way, right? I thought I knew the Bible when I was a theist, and I could go to the Roman Road in First Thessalonians 5:18, and we could get into the Beatitudes, and all of those, and we could get into as well the greatest hits of the Old Testament, but I didn't really know it. And when I was starting to become truly unsatisfied, I thought, all right, fine. I'm going back to Genesis 1:1, and I'm going to just read the whole damn thing front to back like I would read any other book. And when you do that, it doesn't take long, does it? I remember I was getting into, I think Leviticus really cooked my noodle, man. Like Leviticus, I was like, what the what? What? They did what? You did what with what? And then sacrificed it to what? And had incest with who? And before I knew it, I realized, hey, wait a minute. I had fallen in love with the idea of the Bible, but I didn't know the Bible.
Mm.
Statistically, isn't it atheists and practicing Jews know the Bible better than Christians do, statistically? And I find that fascinating.
Yeah.
Like, if you walk into a church and you wanted somebody to tell you what was in the Bible and where it came from or didn't come from, You would actually probably have to leave the church and go find an atheist and have that conversation. I find that fascinating. You know the Bible better now than you knew then, don't you?
Oh, far and away, especially because, I mean, not only have I written books and articles in biblical studies, but I'm also a member of the Society of Biblical Literature. So I better have read at least parts of the book before I go to the next big meeting.
Oh my goodness, I've got a call from Georgie. Am I saying it right, Georgie? Dialing in from Bulgaria.
Yes.
Are you there?
Yes.
You are live and worldwide with Aaron and Seth. What's on your mind?
Well, my claim, my belief is that we are non-physical, eternal beings, and that we have created physical reality so that we have the opportunity to be our true selves here and also to experience our infinite eternal nature from a new point of view.
Georgie, I
sorry,
believe we've had
go
some
ahead,
previous
brother.
conversation before, but let's put it, I don't know how much we want to rehash things, but let's just start at the most basic thing. As far as I can tell, I came to exist a finite period of time ago. And as far as I can tell, everyone I know who has died has remained dead, and I no longer have contact with them. So, how do we actually show anything of what you believe is even probably true, let alone actually true?
So, metaphysics is the idea of mental gymnastics. And so when you look at things, we have existence and non-existence. And existence cannot become non-existence because of their qualities.
That's just not true. Things come into and out of existence all the time. I have a chair in my room here. At one time, that chair did not exist. If I take an axe to it, it'll stop existing as a chair.
That is a time-space perspective.
That is literally the change from existence to non-existence and back and forth. If you were saying something is impossible and I show you it's easily possible, I think that's just a straightforward disproof of everything you claim. I literally took an axe to your beliefs tonight, and I apologize for doing something so violent.
I forgot what I was going to say, but so you see,
Hang on, Georgie, hang on. No. So the chair did not exist. It was fabricated. Aaron took an axe to it. The chair does not exist anymore. It's no longer a chair. It does not exist. I mean, that's fair, isn't it?
No, it is not, because in my point of view, every moment is eternal. And
I'm not. Hang on. Hold on. That doesn't help me. You switched from chair to time. I want to talk about the chair. Did the chair stop existing when he took an axe to it?
No, it exists in a previous reality from our point of view.
How can you demonstrate that? That's a claim. I'd like you to tell me, how do you know that?
Well, I have mentioned before that people all over the world are channeling beings from beyond the earth.
That's interesting. How do you know that?
How do I believe that they're doing what they're saying?
Well, you can say other people are doing something, and that's also a claim that doesn't meet or needs to meet a burden of proof and is not. But how do you know what you know? How do you know that we are non-physical beings that have created our physicality and all of the other things that you've said? How do you come to knowledge?
Well, there are some metaphysics mental exercises that you can do. But so, for example, imagine you're an infinite eternal being. What would you be doing?
Probably tacos. No, hang on.
Tuesday tacos.
Aaron, hang on. Help me with metaphysical. Seems to be the jello that I have a hard time nailing to the wall when people talk about metaphysics. How do you interpret that?
Well, you look at
Hang on,
things
Georgie.
in
Hang on. I want
definitions,
to hear from
qualities.
Aaron. Hang on, brother. I want to hear
Yeah.
from Aaron first, and I'll come right back to you. I promise. Go ahead, brother.
So to me, you could either try to start with metaphysics or you can end with metaphysics. If you start with metaphysics, it seems like all you can do is say, here are the things that are logically possible. And if you try to claim anything beyond that, my metaphysics can be whatever I want. Seth can come up with any metaphysics he wants. And we're all just, individually mentally masturbating. And it's not very useful. If instead we start from, here are the things that we can confirm to be true, what are the generalities that can explain that, and then build up from the physics that we know to the metaphysical, that's how we can actually make progress in knowing what's true. Georgie, if you just start from the metaphysical, the things you claim have to either be logically necessary, that you actually have to be able to prove them from premises that themselves have to somehow be self-evident, like in, say, mathematics, that we can prove in Euclidean geometry the sum of the angles inside of triangle is 180 degrees. That's something you could prove from the axioms of Euclid. But the various claims of that you are eternal and that space and time are not actually real, those are claims that you have to either prove and show that they are absolutely true, or you need to start from the stuff we can see and shows to be true and then build up from there. If you start from top down, you need a rock solid logical proof. In my own experience with logicians or metaphysicians trying to do that, they've mostly wasted my time. So, Georgie, for you, what do you do to logically prove that nothing comes in and out of existence, that everything is eternal?
I cannot prove it tangibly. I'm sorry. But
I think
if you look at the
that means
pyramids
we're kind of stuck.
and Machu Picchu, if you look at the pyramids, the chamber, the coffin in the chamber was where a person lies, and then he meditates, and he gets interdimensional knowledge. And how did they build
Are you talking the pyramids of Egypt?
Yes.
So the thing is, though, we know what the pyramids are for. They're tombs. People don't go in there to meditate. They go in there to rot. And when you say that, that now means you're going into archaeology. Now you're talking the sciences. And if you talk to 9 out of 10 Egyptologists, they're going to tell you the pyramids are tombs. They're in a necropolis. We have the writings of the Egyptians explaining so much about their beliefs, and our knowledge all collectively indicates the pyramids were tombs. We have found mummies in them and other things showing, hey, this is where they put dead bodies. The surrounding area is built as a necropolis, etc. When you come and say that's not true and that somehow that they are getting knowledge beamed into their heads, you are not going to be doing that based on what is at least mainstream Egyptology.
Look at how they built them. So they use sound to make them like plasma, like liquid, and they put them into place and levitate.
No, there's no evidence for that, and quite the opposite. We actually see what tools they have because they left them around, and they used copper tools, saws, and sand as an abrasive to cut very slowly through rocks, that we actually have drawings of them and how they actually would move their large monuments around on wooden sleds.
Look on the internet about Machu Picchu. Look at how the stones are curved, but they're perfectly aligned.
That's called good hand tooling. This is not, again, a mystery to masons or archaeologists. And why are we jumping to Machu Picchu when I talked about the Egyptian pyramids? Georgie, is it the mainstream view amongst Egyptologists that the pyramids are tombs and were constructed by the Egyptians using not even bronze, basically at best Bronze Age technology?
There's new information coming in. They made LiDARs and got deep into the earth with them, and they found amazing stuff.
I know what you're talking about, and here's the problem. Everyone who wasn't part of that team looked at the results and laughed their asses off. Because here's the thing about the claims that, hey, we see structures going down kilometers. There's a major problem with that, even if you know absolutely nothing else. That would say that there are structures below the water table. In other words, they're saying, hey, there's all these structures there, and yet they're also completely flooded, and they couldn't somehow notice that with their LiDAR. And by the way, their LiDAR was actually something that they had taken from satellites, and then doing a whole bunch of inference that basically every remote sensing expert looked at that and said, what the fuck are you guys doing? And what are they doing? Oh, they're actually a bunch of UFO people. So they're actually, again, not professional Egyptologists, not professional remote sensors. These guys are anomaly hunters, and they created a new anomaly to get press results. So if you're saying go on the internet, yes, go on the internet and see what actual archaeologists have said about this. In fact, Seth, are you familiar with Flint Dibble?
Yes, not extremely, but yeah, I think he went on Rogan and debunked a lot of the crazy Egyptology, the false Egyptology that was going on.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I bring him up because he had a live stream several months ago when this was in the news, and brought in a couple other experts, including someone who could speak Italian, so they could explain what the claims were from the Italian team that was saying, "Hey, look what we discovered below the pyramids," and showing, "Hey, this is a bunch of nonsense from people who should not be taken seriously." Again, Georgie, that's why I was saying, what is the mainstream view amongst Egyptologists? And you went for not even the fringe amongst Egyptologists. You went to people who probably can't even read hieroglyphs, let alone operate the equipment in sophisticated ways to tell us what's really going on, and showing that it's actually in agreement with other measurement methods. So be careful, Georgie. There's lots of stuff on the internet, and not everything on the internet is right.
Well, speaking of UFO people, the God of the Old Testament is actually the ETs who engineered human beings on the earth. And that
so
is
that's
why in
yet
some
another claim. Georgie, that's another claim. And you started with metaphysics, you've gone to the pyramids, and now you're going to aliens are the source behind the Bible. Again, let's just back up. This is a claim. Why should we believe what you believe?
because the double slit experiments shows us that each
No, about the
moment
Bible. You just made a claim about aliens being the source behind the biblical stories. Why should we believe you that is even plausibly true?
because in some texts the God is spelled multiple.
You mean that they uses Elohim, which is a plural?
Yeah, plural.
Why does that imply aliens rather than multiple supernatural gods, just like the Olympians are a plural of gods?
Because they wrote it down.
So did the Greeks, so did the Hindus.
I'm sorry, I cannot prove anything tangibly or on the spot.
That's what I was waiting to hear, Georgie. We have a burden of proof that must be met, especially with these extraordinary claims. And as you say, you cannot prove them. And I think that is the next step in your journey. And I wish you the very best on that journey. And thank you so much for calling the show today. We'll see you later. So, is metaphysics kind of the get out of logic free card for a lot of people? I mean, if they want something to operate outside of, the evidential, hey, it can't be laboratory tested, it operates as sort of a super physics. Is metaphysics sort of I don't know. Is that supposed to be an escape? Do a lot of people use it as an escape, or is there really a
It is
there, Aaron?
okay. I need to talk and say this again. I'm not a professional philosopher, so I need to stay in my
Sure.
lane. But um, the best metaphysics I see, first off, we all actually have a metaphysics. If we think the supernatural doesn't exist, that is a metaphysical claim. But I try to do it from the physical evidence that we have access to. And literally, when Aristotle uses this word of metaphysics, that we have this book of Aristotle called the Metaphysics, it's literally, oh, this is the book that came after the physics. um, so it is not necessarily as high-minded and as special in that way. If anything, it should be what we do after we've done all of the other heavy lifting in philosophy in terms of logic, in terms of physics, in terms of epistemology, and then say, okay, from this, what is like the general truths of reality from that? If you start, you can do philosophy bottom up or top down, and top down seems to always be extremely question begging, and especially when it doesn't seem to match what we see, and then you just have to keep gerrymandering your metaphysics in any way that you want to get to the results you want. And, well, both in politics and in philosophy, gerrymandering should be avoided if you want to have any access to good governments or good knowledge, in my humble, correct opinion.
You brought up the pyramids, and I have to go back to aliens, right? And what used to be a history channel, which is called the History Channel, but is no longer really a history channel. It's either the Hitler Channel or it's the UFOs channel, the Ancient Aliens channel. And of course, then I'm thinking, well, we know where the pyramids came from. Haven't you watched Stargate? Duh. I mean, 30 years ago, that problem was solved. But there are a lot of sinister conspiracy theories or backstories, supposed manufactured backstories behind many of these things, including the ancient civilizations. A lot of the ancient alien sort of narratives are actually a lot more sinister because those narratives were put in place by people who wanted to go and colonize what they considered to be inferior tribes, take all of their land, and say, well, it's okay if we wipe them out. They're obviously so primitive. They could have never constructed this civilization. It must have been the aliens. And then they go in and they stamp their own brand on everything. Have you gotten into those waters as far as people who have used
Yes.
the alien conspiracy?
I've looked at some of the history there. Now, I need to actually give the shout out, especially to an associate of mine, Jason Colavito, who has been doing like the research on ancient alien folks for decades at this point, and points out that, hey, in the 19th century, to explain all these civilizations, you had Atlantis or some sort of world civilization of some sort that explains how all these primitive people could have built these things, because there's no way the people of Latin America could have been smart enough to build cities or things like that. It's obviously built on racism. And an interesting transition happened in the 20th century, and part of it was literal Soviet anti-Western propaganda to try to actually undermine Western religion by positing, oh, it is aliens behind civilizations and religions and the Bible and things like that. And they actually, like the Soviet Union would actually promote that in English language or other Western language publications for us rubes to read and accept. And it actually had some success because some of that propaganda literally found its way into the premier ancient aliens text, Chariots of the Gods by Eric von Daniken. Literally some of the material, including images made in the 1960s, was put into this book thinking, oh, these are ancient people drawings of aliens. It's like, no, this was literally like the magazine cover of the Soviets, trying to convince you that the Book of Revelation was inspired by aliens or things like that. Or that places like Baalbek in Lebanon was actually an alien rocket launching pad, and all sorts of other absurd things like that. And yeah, it was literally Soviet propaganda that then got twisted up in the West and then re-spiritualized to make God a bit more real by saying, oh, it's actually aliens, because we at least believe in aliens, so therefore we take away the cognitive dissonance in believing in the supernatural. That's some of the history of how we get aliens built the pyramids.
Yeah, I never realized there was so much that was insidious. I always thought, well, it's just harmless pseudoscience. People have a wacky imagination, but instead, it was actually a tool used, a propaganda tool to oppress,
Mhm.
colonize, enslave, co-opt, etc. It's fascinating. By the way, we
Yeah.
are doing super chats at the end of this broadcast. $5 minimum. I think it's a great way to support the line. So if you'd like your super chat read, now is the time. You ready for another call,
Yeah.
Aaron? You all set?
Just one last thing I should note, just
Yeah.
to put up the depression. Ancient Aliens. It's still on, and it's in season 21 on the History Channel.
It's just crazy. It's
Yep.
crazy. Our culture. All right, I'm going to go off for a second. We'll commiserate, or we'll sit here
All right.
at the bar and drown ourselves in our sorrows. But I'm like, we live in a culture where people can't name 2 Supreme Court justices. You know what I'm saying? But they do know everything about the Kardashians. By the way, was it Kim Kardashian who said that she thinks we never went to the moon? That was a
Yep.
recent development. So yes, that's always one of the great science communicators of our age. Kim Kardashian says she doesn't think we went to the moon, but the capacity of people to lean into the insanity, the stuff where you and I are like, no, nobody would ever believe that, and yet they do, often in large numbers. And to see the History Channel essentially profiting off of that, I don't know, maybe they threw up their hands and thought, well, no one really gives a shit about real history, so let's go out and stir the pot and make it all flashy with aliens. But I don't know, does part of you die inside? Because part of me dies inside, Aaron. That's just me.
Well,
That's just me.
I definitely felt that way, and I was even feeling that way about the History Channel before Ancient Aliens. So I've, at least in my head canon, the original tagline for History Channel has changed. Originally, when they would advertise themselves, they say the History Channel, where the past comes alive. And now, to me, the channel is history, where the past comes to die.
Yeah, I like it. You could trademark and sell that. I'm just saying. I've got Danny on the line who is dialing in from, looks like Argentina. Danny, welcome. Are you there?
I am right here.
You are on the
Hello?
air, my friends. Comment or question? What's on your mind?
All right. I come in to make my argument for. I think that I've been listening to you guys for a while because I've been here waiting to get on the line, right? And I have a couple of things that I wrote down. Not a couple, just like, for example, the metaphor or the example that they gave of the chair, dismantling the chair with the axe, right? And using that as an example of how you can make something stop exist, something like this. And I disagree with that idea. I disagree with that,
Wait,
and I think
wait, wait,
that I
hang
could.
on, hold on, Danny. So if
I could.
Aaron takes the axe to the chair and he reduces
Yeah.
it to splinters, what would it then be?
Yeah.
Is it still a chair?
No, that's the issue because he's saying that he can make that thing stop exist like that, but I think that here you're confusing yourself with language because you're defining that thing as a chair, but in reality, the chair is just a construct. It doesn't exist. It's a linguistic construct in the mind. It's just a wood, and in fact, it's not even wood. It's you can go and just boil down to what it is that is really at the fundamental level, and that thing is not coming in and out of existence. You're just changing the configuration of something. It's
Yeah,
like
but
saying,
you've
"Hey, well,
changed
here I
the
have a ring."
configuration. Let's say we
Yeah,
break
well,
it way, way
it's word
down
for
to the
word, right?
atomic
It's
level.
word.
All right. If
Yeah,
we break it down to the atomic level and we rearrange the elements and all of the materials, it could be any number of things. It could be a chair, it could be a bed, it could be a shingle, it could be whatever.
yes,
It stops
yes.
existing as a chair, I believe, is what Aaron was saying. Is that fair, Aaron? If you take the axe to the chair, it is no longer a chair as we define it. That would be fair, wouldn't it?
At
I
least
mean, I think
that's what
that
I'm trying to go
I
for in terms of functionality, because one of the ways that we define things is its form and its function. If I take an axe to the chair, it loses both. It fails to be something I can sit on with anything I would dare call comfort. It loses the form of chair. At the very least, again, there is a lot of metaphysics where you could say that nothing actually exists except for the simple things, and then we say a chair is just a bunch of simple things assembled chairwise. And
Yeah.
we're bending language in ways that might allow more precision for the philosopher, but for the way that we talk as regular folks, I think it's still pretty reasonable to say if I destroy the chair, that I can no longer sit in it, it is fair to say the chair no longer exists. And if we want to have a semantic argument about this, it seems like we're trying to either write a new philosophy dissertation, or we're trying to avoid talking about what you really wanted to talk about.
No, because I'm not avoiding, because I'm going to pivot right into what I want to talk about from here. But I think that clearing this up is very important, because I think this is just a fundamental element of discussing basically anything in this way of searching the truth, which is to understand that form and name are not the truth. I think that's just it's not a strong argument or a strong perspective. That's what I think. Because if you have a ring made out of gold and you say, hello, here I have a ring, you don't have a ring. That's gold. Ring is just a form that currently has. But I think that abstracting yourself from reality like that is just, it's not a very precise way of speaking about things.
So if I was to melt the gold and make it into a gold tooth, would it still be a ring?
No, that's right. But I think that the precision in language is not too strong, because what you should say is it's gold. The form is irrelevant.
Actually, no. By giving it form, we've made it more precise, because we're now saying gold in this particular shape. I could even then put measurement numbers on it and be even more precise. So quite the opposite. Taking away the formal information makes it less precise, not more precise.
No, because you're saying a ring, but in mathematics, for example, you would call it a cone section, right? Or there are more precise ways of calling it. And if you talk with a mathematician or a physicist and you tell him that you're dismantling this object, it stop existing, it doesn't make any sense.
Hang on. Hey, Aaron, what's your PhD in?
Physics.
Well, that's surprising. That's very surprising to me. That you speak like this, being a physicist.
That was worth. That's worth my whole appearance. That moment was worth my whole appearance. Danny, I'm going to move us off of the chair and the gold and the ring and all that. Can you tell me what the main gist of your call was?
Yeah, I think that by losing, if you're an atheist, you're not going to believe that there's, like most atheists that I've spoken to. I'm asking this to you as well. While I say this, they don't believe in an objective morality, and anything goes. Right? You might adjust yourself to some subjective, code of conduct, but you do not believe that there's an absolute morality. Am I right? Atheists, or pure atheists.
How many atheists have you interviewed personally on this subject?
Well, I've spoken to many, and they all defend the idea that there's no absolute morality in the universe.
Give me a number. I mean, less than 50? I'm trying to determine what kind of data set.
With the internet, with hundreds. And I tell you that the vast majority will say that there's no absolute morality. And I think that this will take you down a very, very dark path. Okay? And we can talk about things like, you cannot prove that we are going to come back to this life. You cannot prove that consciousness exists beyond death and all that.
Yeah. I'm going to come back to morality. Let's do one at a time. So if someone says they don't believe in an objective moral standard, meaning There is not an objective moral standard bearer, and this is usually where apologists like to go. If we talk about evolved and situational ethics, this cooks everybody's noodle. Whenever they look at someone and they're like, well, if you don't believe that God put in place a right and wrong framework with hard angles and hard edges on it, then how would you know? And this is where they always like to go, how would you know rape and murder are wrong? Would you say that Aaron and I don't know that rape and murder are wrong?
Well, yeah, but not in an absolute sense. That's what I've noticed from many atheists. They are materialist, reductionist.
Now, may I
and
ask,
they say
when
that,
you say absolutes, Danny, I want to just check here. When you say absolutes,
Yeah.
I might think that it's absolutely the case. You hit my hand with a hammer, it hurts, I don't like that. And I don't need a greater metaphysical truth for this to be the case. This is just objective facts about pain reception and the functioning of healthy brains.
Yeah.
But I think you're trying to say is a thing is objective if it conforms to the dictates of some sort of master authority.
No.
Am I
mean-
stating your position accurately?
No. I mean, because I'm sort of pantheistic. I'm theistic, but sort of pantheistic in a way, where I think that consciousness, what we are as consciousness, as conscious entities and beings, I think that I have to explain this in order for the previous things to make sense. That's why I'm going on this. It looks like a tangent, but it's not. So we're these conscious beings that exist eternally. When you pass out or die, there's no time. There's no sense of time. For you to have time, you have to be conscious, and you immediately exist again in less than an instant, okay? And you're always in this realm, and if you fall into thinking, there's no objective morality deep within yourself. Outwardly, you can say, hey, don't you think this is bad, that the other person feels pain and all? But if you have to demoralize yourself, you're in a position that you feel like you're in a position of power, the other person feels pain, but you don't care because you're getting off with it or somehow like this, you will eventually, after death, the moment I think there's a thread, this is what I believe, from life to life, and you will not escape this universe.
Okay, well, I'm going to stop you, Danny.
Yeah.
What you think doesn't interest me as much as what you can demonstrate. If there is an objective morality, who or what put the objective morality in place? Where'd the framework originate that you're referring to?
Yourself. When you do something, imagine something cringe in your life, right? Then you're sleeping at night, and suddenly you turn around and you feel something in the gut, and you think about that situation, right? And I think this is inherently embedded in us, right? And it's within you. It's intrinsic in the fabric of this reality, right? And if you start to become something less than human, I believe you start to lose certain things that makes us who we are and the success that we have had. I think that the success
I'm hearing
of humanity,
a lot of I think, and I'm still interested in if I have a moral center or an evolved ethical code. I wouldn't call that objective. I mean, it's going to be flawed. There's going to be a lot of subjectivity there, but I do understand harm. As an evolved creature, I understand the nature of feeling harm and then doling out harm. I understand that antisocial behaviors will not nearly get me as far in life, unless you're Trump, as pro-social behaviors. And I understand that it's better to heal than to harm. I don't need an objective, a hard line, sort of a reductionist moral code to be able to understand the concepts of help and harm. Do I?
well, yeah, you speak about the subjective way of seeing it, and then that you don't need a reductionist, moral code.
Simplistic would be a better way of saying it.
Yeah, and simplistic. And I'm not talking about that. I even think that the way that you can know this code is not even by tagging or describing emotions or context, but by connecting within yourself with what you truly feel within yourself, right? That's how you access
Lit,
that. Like
hang
knowing
on, hold
thyself.
on, hold on.
Knowing
So
thyself. Yeah.
you think this about people based on some of the conversations you've had online with atheists who you probably don't actually know, but this is not what we call a science-based approach. You're not using a database. This is you're talking about really unverifiable responses. You're talking about flawed human perception. And beyond all of that, I'm just not convinced we are doing a whole lot of productive talking here about morality, evolved ethics. So we need to go to a destination here, or I'm going to probably go ahead and move on. What's your point? Atheists don't know right from wrong, or we have an objective moral standard, we just don't admit
No,
it.
all right. My point is that what I see in North America, and I'm highly influenced by the culture. I'm from Argentina, but I'm highly influenced. As you know, I can speak the language fluently. This is my second language. And I think that, yeah, North America is losing the way, it is losing the way. And this is something that is happening. Many people
Well,
say it's top down. And I think that I come here
hang
to
on,
say
hang
that,
on, Danny, hang on, just a second. He went to North America, and I just want to stop for just a second and breathe and let Aaron take over. Are you hearing a salient point anywhere? Am I just thick? Because I'm totally lost. What do you think, Aaron?
I'm having a hard time tracking, and conversely, um, if we're wanting to follow the models of, say, what's going on from where our caller is calling from and take the chainsaw to our bureaucracy, like Millet is doing, we may not have the greatest success. So, and he also mentioned, learning another language. So, 我们应该学习中文. Let's learn Chinese together then. That's my best thought right now.
Danny, we're not really understanding what you're. And in the description box of your call, it says hell
yeah,
is real, and being an atheist will drive you to hell. So, did you
that's
call to
exactly what I
tell
was
us
going.
that we're going to hell?
Yeah, that was exactly what I was going to say.
Okay, well,
It
then your
started
objective
off
moral
through
standard
North
bearer
America.
would be the
Yeah,
creator of hell, which is the Christian deity Yahweh. Yes?
I am not Christian, and Christianity is evil. All right.
What hell are you referring to if it's not the hell of Christianity?
I'm referring to the hell on earth, which is going to be dismantled, and it is the root cause of it is
So, if I'm going by the description you have, you're saying atheism
yeah,
will lead to hell. But again, hell is a Christian concept, so it seems like Christians were plenty good at doing things driving us towards hell. Secondly, I'd much rather live now than 1,000 years ago under the Christian nationalist policies of the Crusader states. Thank you very much.
well, yeah,
And
I
if we
agree with
want to
that.
look at
I
the
agree with that.
standards of and if we want to look at, say, the Nordic countries, which are more secular, versus the U.S., which is not as secular,
Yeah.
and look at like standards of living and things like that, it's night and day, which is better. And even within the U.S., more secular states, less religious states seem to be doing better off than more religious states. So, if anything, the evidence would suggest we need to get more secular faster, and the major religions are not actually helping us avoid hell. And worst of all is some of the people who really, really believe this stuff really want an excuse to push the button to make nuclear Armageddon so we all truly bring hell on Earth, because that's what it takes to bring the heavenly Jerusalem down from space. And that scares the hell out of me.
I'm going to humble myself down and ask you if I told you, okay, I'm open. I'm not going to hold on tightly to these beliefs which you deem are or consider wrong. And I ask you, how would you convert me into or convince me into your way of thinking. How would you do that? How would you do? How would you? Convince me. Really convince me down deep. This is why I'm here. I want to be convinced of what you're saying
I
is
don't
true.
believe you.
Present some facts.
I don't believe you are here with your receivers wide open because you are genuinely interested in discarding bad ideas and pursuing better ones. I think you are here in defense of, which is how we translate the word apologist or apologetics. I don't think you are here to have us convince you of anything. I don't buy that.
Okay, I'm gonna coin a phrase from The Art of War, which says, "Never underestimate your opponent." You might be surprised. Okay.
I don't think you'd be coining the phrase if you're quoting from another source, but that's besides the point.
Okay, I'm laughing at myself. Yeah, you're right. I used the wrong term.
I'm going to put you on hold for just a second here. Aaron, any final thoughts before I move on to Adrian, who will be our last call? You want to cap this at all?
I do want to answer Danny's question as honestly as I can. I don't come off with say, here is the one proof that atheism is true or anything like that. To me, it is a thought process, and it comes down to this. What do you believe? Why do you believe it? Do you actually have good grounds? And what have you actually done to challenge your beliefs? What have you done to go out there, not simply to defend your belief, but to actually challenge it and see if it can stand up to scrutiny? That's the reason I'm an atheist, and that's why I would ask other people to join me in this. Even if you come to different conclusions than me, actually challenge your beliefs. That's at least how I got to where I'm at, and come join me in the journey. We have cookies.
Can I give an answer to that?
Go ahead.
All right. Well, I'm playing devil's advocate here. In reality,
I don't want a devil's advocate. I want to know what you think, Danny.
Yeah, that's
how you can demonstrate what you think.
Please, Aaron is a patient guy. Can you please be more patient with me, Seth? Please, let me. Okay.
Have I proven impatient? Here's my point, Danny. I'm a momentum guy. And while the hosts serve the calls on this show, more importantly, the calls serve the tens of thousands of people who will ultimately see this video. So when you dial up to this show, there is kind of a social contract that you are signing. You need to be compelling. You need to be able to engage. You need to be able to answer questions. And the minute I see the people in the chat and feel the show begin to drift, I feel the responsibility as a host to jump in and say, hey, we either need to get on track, go to a productive place, or move on. So I'm just simply asking you, take us to a productive place, or I'm going to move on. That's fair, isn't it, Danny?
Yeah, it's fair. It's fair. I'm an atheist from the age of 9. I was just bringing this up. I don't believe any of this.
You're an atheist.
Yeah, I'm an atheist. I don't believe any of this stuff.
That's 20 minutes of my life I'll never get back, Aaron. Just gone. Just gone. We're going to hell, but there's hell on earth and North America, and you have an objective moral standard that you came up with subjectively, and I've been an atheist all along. This guy just wanted to hear himself talk. I apologize to you. I was a poor steward of the audience and your investment in this show. I deserve to be punished. Sorry about that. Let me park here, though. He did open the door for us to have an actual productive conversation about evolved ethics. It's imperfect. But I do hear, and I've heard it a squillion times, and so have you, but for some, it is the first time they've explored the question, if you don't believe in God, where do your morals come from? And I used to just sort of rush it off and go, oh, God, I would eye roll it away. But again, for many people, this is the first time they've really explored the question. And they think maybe I'm on to something. But it makes a whole lot of sense to me that my chances of surviving as one of my own ancestors in the African savannah were a lot better if I engaged in pro-social behaviors than if I engaged in antisocial behaviors. If I murdered everybody and tried to go out and survive and thrive alone, probably a good chance I wasn't going to survive and thrive and pass on my genes. I was better in a more cooperative model. And as such, we understand that helping others comes back and often we'll help ourselves, even if there's not any true altruism. Let's say there's always a tiny bit of selfishness attached to a charitable or good action. I think evolved ethics makes a lot of sense. As a scientist, what's your take on morality without gods?
All right. Yeah. Again, this is, outside of my expertise, both in that it is philosophy and in terms of it being evolutionary. Well, again, biology is not my forte, but I would say this much. Fundamentally, I realize I am happy around other people that are happy. I am sad when I see other people that are sad. When I can provide a smile to a person, I feel wonderful. And when I bring a person pain, I do not feel good because of it. Maybe for some instant I'm angry with a person, but when I go back and reflect, man, am I not happy about that? And if we want to go into the science of it, from what I understand, even if you talk to psychopaths, you actually find out they are not happy people because they're disconnected from the happiness of other people. Once you realize what actually makes you happy and you realize the things that make you happy and makes other people happy, you just happen to have invented morality along the way.
I like that. I also reject many of the more simplistic notions of a great example is we have to have the 10 commandments in all of our schools and courthouses and all of our public spaces, which is really marking territory because the vast majority of Americans can't name even 5 of the 10. They know all the words to Bohemian Rhapsody, but they can't tell you what 5 of the 10 commandments are. But they're so reductive. I come back to that word. Thou shalt not bear false witness. Forgive me if everyone has heard this one before, but I think it doesn't always work that way. Is lying always immoral? This would be a Cy Tim Cake question. Is it always immoral to tell a lie? And I give this situation where I'm home and there's a frantic knock on the door and I open it and it's a neighbor. It's a woman who's been horribly abused by her husband who is trying to kill her. And she's crying and says, can you protect me? So Natalie and I bring her into our house and we lock the door. And we hide her way back in the back of the house. And all of a sudden there's a pounding on the door and I open it up and it's the abusive husband. And he says, is my wife here? And I say, no, she's not. I have lied. I just bore false witness. But I committed a moral act for the protection of the victim and the protection of my own family. And that kind of thing does not fit on a single sentence in an Old Testament book or on some brochure, in a chick tract or whatever else you want to put it on. Situational ethics are so complicated. Is it wrong to steal if you're in an impoverished nation and you're about to starve to death and you grab a piece of bread by the letter of the law? Okay, but do I consider that an immoral act? I really do not. Do you ever get into these conversations, Aaron?
I'm remembering back when I was exploring atheism versus not, and when it came to the questions of ethics, one of the books I was reading, for better or for worse, was by the now disgraced Ravi Zacharias. And he tries giving this thought experiment to attack Kant's theory of ethics, the deontological ethics, basically the kind of rules-based that here are these absolutes that you're supposed to never break. And he gives the example of what if a person is some sort of machine that will kill them unless you tell some sort of lie to get them out. But according to your ethics, you're not supposed to lie and you're not supposed to kill. So if you lie to save the person, you've broken your ethics. Oh, isn't this terrible? This shows how Kantian ethics doesn't work. And I'm just like, those are your own fucking commandments. How do you get around it? Does he answer that question? No. So it's like, oh, you just created a problem, which it concludes punching yourself in the balls and pretending nothing happened.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right, I got one more and we'll do super chats. Adrian is dialing in from California, West Coast call. Thank you so much for being a part of the broadcast. Are you there?
I am here, Mr. Seth. I am here, Mr. Aaron. Good evening to you both. I just want to say first and foremost, from listening to axe cutting chairs to aliens and their pyramids to theists / atheists on y'all call, that was something to listen to, y'all. Just wanted to say off top.
It really is
It's an
a
adventure.
thrill every moment, really. We are the motorcycle ball of death of atheist activism and science education. Thank you for calling. What's on your mind, Adrian?
Well, initially, off the cuff while I was off the YouTube, I seen the initial thing on y'all title said, "Can anything shake your faith to that thing?" And I'm gonna say I'm kind of a sucker for challenges a little bit, but just to say off top, I don't like contentious conversations, especially with two strangers. You know what I mean? So I just want to say off top, if we're gonna have a convo, I'm not gonna disrespect y'all. Y'all have my word. I'm just hoping the same from y'all. If we can go
Do
from there.
we seem like contentious people to you? I think we're doing all right. What's your point?
No, so
What do you
far so
want to talk
good.
about, Adrian? What's on your mind?
Well, I kind of wanted to. Well, since it's my first time engaging with you guys, I just wanted. At first, I just wanted to see how I ask all atheists that I engage with, like, how did y'all get to the point? How do y'all get to y'all point? And why don't y'all believe in the word?
The Bible?
The Bible, yes, the word of God.
Aaron, would you
Why
like to
don't y'all believe
begin?
that?
Why don't you believe the good word?
When I tried
what made
exploring the
y'all? Well, I
questions,
heard Aaron. I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. My bad.
Yeah, let
it's all
him
right.
go.
It's all
Let's
right.
see what Aaron
Yeah.
has to say here.
Yeah. I kind of said it a little bit earlier as well, but fundamentally, I came from a believing background, and then I went challenged my beliefs because I thought some of the stuff I believed seemed to be really weird and filled with either mysteries or just straight up contradictions. I remember in high school wondering, it's like, if God exists and is all powerful, why does Satan exist? How does that square? And thought processes like that, and realizing I don't have any good reasons to believe this. And at
Mm-hmm.
best, the evidence points to the world being naturalistic. There's nothing supernatural as far as we can tell. Every time we try checking, it doesn't work. And all the more so if we think there's supposed to be this all good God that is trying to commune with us. And everything people say about him seems to be contentious on both place and time that the messenger is there. So if you travel to India, God is different than he was in Mesoamerica, as he different was in Scandinavia 1500 years ago, and so on. Ultimately,
Mm-hmm.
this looks like storytelling, and there's nothing that makes any of these stories more compelling than any others in having truths to the nature of reality. And conversely, it looks like the sorts of things that people make up in the same ways that we have mythology around the world that we don't believe.
I can't improve
Okay.
on that. What do you think, Adrian?
I respect his position. I was going to try to go and say, is it the miracles itself that you don't believe? Is it the resurrected Christ you don't believe? You don't believe that it's God inspired at all? Like this was written by a group of men or something like that, a group of human beings? Is that the position that you guys are taking?
I
Pretty
mean, if
much.
I
I mean,
may,
top down. Oh, go ahead. Sorry,
it,
Seth. Go ahead.
Like this, I just want
I
to say,
mean,
like when
I think what you're asking is, what was it singular? And you're talking to two people who have taken a very deep dive into the Bible, the history
Mhm.
of the Bible, world religions, and general comparative religions. And so there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pieces to this puzzle. And they're not going to be, I can't run down all of them on the show. I mean,
Of course, of course.
Deconstruction stories are extremely complicated, but I think Aaron said it well. We looked at the Bible, we realized it was human made, much of it borrowed, much of it offensive. Scientifically, historically, and morally, it often falls to two pieces. And we believe that it was just a man made product of mythological times, and we reject it as a source of absolute truth. We don't buy it. We think that's fair.
And so you never, and this is, and I don't mean to jumble my words and all that other good stuff. I'm trying to formulate a question, because why I go on to these streams is to try to seek, secular knowledge or knowledge outside the Bible, and try to figure out why people think the way they do. I tell atheists like y'all, like, my personal experience is what got me to my belief, but I've been told that's, circular reasoning, and then people want to get into metaphysics and all that other good stuff, and I'm really not trying to hear that. Y'all trying to basically say, and my question is, excuse me, I am kind of nervous a little bit, so please excuse me. Do y'all feel the same way with all the religions put together, or is it just the God of Abraham that you guys are denying?
Denying as in we don't buy it? Well, I think, Aaron, you and I have looked at probably the world's major religions. I'm not an expert in the Quran, but I know enough about the history of Islam and the Quran. And of course, we're talking about Allah as and this is an Abrahamic faith. We've looked at Judaism, we've looked at, we've looked into Hinduism, and all of the major religions in the world. I would think, most people have taken at least a cursory look, and they realize religions of the world are like Mexican food. And this is how I like to say it. Okay. So I walk into a Mexican restaurant and I say, give me a taco. What's on a taco? Tortilla, meat, lettuce, cheese, tomato. Oh, okay, that's great. I'll take a tostada. What's on a tostada? Tortilla, meat, lettuce, cheese, tomato. Okay, well, why don't you give me some nachos? What's on that? Tortilla, meat, lettuce, cheese, tomato. Literally, religions of the world are using the same ingredients, and they're serving them up in slightly different ways. But knowing that these religions were largely born out of times where the, ignorant and superstitious times, seeing specific God claims that have not been demonstrated or backed up, we simply say we don't buy it. We don't hate God. We're not on a campaign to kill God. We're just saying we don't buy it, and we think it's just fine if other people say they don't buy it either. And bad ideas or unsubstantiated ideas should be challenged. That's fair, isn't it, Adrian?
It is fair. It is fair. And I know that from based off some of the atheists that I've talked to, that physical evidence is a big thing for them. Like, they don't see Jesus Christ in front of them. They don't see God appearing supernaturally in front of them. They don't see miracles like anybody walking on water in front of them, or a donkey talking, or somebody stuck in a well for 3 days. They don't see that. That's why they don't believe in the book. Based on some of the people that I've talked to, they give me these are their reasons, along with some religious trauma and so forth. I'm just trying to figure out, going on different streams, why different people have their unbelief. And where they get it from, whether that's it.
I don't want to
really
walk on Aaron any more than I've already have, but I'm going to ask this question. If I read the book of Numbers and I say, I don't believe that a donkey argued with a man speaking Hebrew, that would be a reasonable position, wouldn't it?
It would be. It would be.
Yeah.
I would have thought, if current times, I would have thought you was on something if you told me that an animal was talking.
I don't believe Methuselah lived to be over 900 years old. That's reasonable, isn't it?
Reasonable.
Yeah. I don't believe that a guy lived for 3 days in the stomach of a submerged prison fish. That's reasonable, isn't it?
That is reasonable.
Okay, so if someone was to make the claim that things like this happened, flying chariots of fire and supermen who gained power based on the length of their hair and all of this stuff, and we said you're going to have to meet a burden of proof, that's reasonable too, isn't it?
That is.
We agree. Aaron, did you want to jump in?
I want tacos. I'm sorry, that's where my mind is.
Apparently, I'm craving. That's twice I've gone to the taco thing tonight. My fault. My fault.
But you're on point. In general, many of the stories that we find in one religious text, you can find things that are analogous in others, and the reasons we don't believe those become the sorts of reasons you don't believe the originals. So, and they don't even have to necessarily be supernatural. Let's take another
Not to cut you
famous
off.
Bible story. Oh, so, go ahead.
If I may ask, Aaron, does this also include like stuff like the Septuagint, the Dead Sea Scrolls, and so forth?
I mean, those are all basically textual traditions for the Bible, and you would use those to try to reconstruct the story in the earliest form that you can. It doesn't get necessarily to the truth of the stories, not necessarily, at least. Though it does complicate some things, like the genealogies in Genesis. They're different between the Masoretic text in Hebrew as instead what we find in the Greek of the Septuagint, but that's, for the most part, my problem. That's tomato. It doesn't really affect my position on the truth of the stories. But let me go, like I said, I was going to give you an example of a non-supernatural story that I don't believe, and in part because I see interesting analogies. You probably know about the story of the escaping baby Moses from chapter 2 of the book of Exodus, right?
Yes.
So, yeah, and just for everyone else's sake, in case they're not as willing to read that chapter, the story is that the Egyptians are going about and telling the Hebrew women that all of their male babies are going to be killed, and Moses, his mother, in an attempt to save him, puts him in a basket and has him float down the Nile River, and lo and behold, as it floats down, it is discovered by an Egyptian princess, takes him in, saves him from the water, and gives him the name Moses. And, you know, maybe a beautiful little story. It's been recreated, I don't even know how many times in cinema. But the thing is, that's also a retelling, because we find that story in older sources from the Middle East. In particular, we have it referred to Sargon Akkad. It's repeated by Sargon II, who was Assyrian, if memory serves. We see the same sort of story told of Romulus and Remus. We even see the story told all the way into China, where it is told of a important monk who is a central figure in the famous novel Journey to the West. We see this sort of story told around all the world, and it's all fiction. So when we see it again in the Bible, you're just like, hey, this is a trope, not a history lesson. And that's even with a non-supernatural story. All the more so when we take in, and Moses held out his staff and the Red Sea divided out and millions of people crossed and then somehow destroyed the entire Egyptian army, and not a single shred of evidence for any of this exists anywhere.
That's what another person that I called it, they basically said the same thing, that there's no archaeology, there's nothing with archaeology that supports that statement. So I heard that one.
Yeah, I would say not just doesn't support it, but actually refutes it. Again, I have to plug myself. I'm currently working on another book project with the same Jonathan M.S. Pierce that helped with this book on aliens and religion. We're doing a book project on the Exodus. I've actually done some peer-reviewed papers on this as well, so it's not just my mad scribblings. It's somehow I convinced some other Bible scholars that I know what I'm talking about. Apparently, I don't know how I did that, but nonetheless, among the issues you're going to have is the time frame that the Bible gives for when the Israelites left Egypt and went to Canaan. That region was still controlled by Egypt. So that's like saying you in, I don't know what part of California, just, you don't have to tell me, but I'm just going to say you're in LA. Yeah,
It's
let's
cool.
just or San
I
Diego.
got nothing to hide.
If you were saying you were trying to escape the terror of the Gavin Newsom regime, and so you left San Diego and you traveled all the way to San Francisco, did you really escape?
Not necessarily, but
Exactly.
I hear what you're
And that's
saying.
the thing, because
Mhm.
Canaan at that time was literally an Egyptian satellite state. They had like Egyptian troops controlling the place. All the major regions there sent letters back and were so gracious to the Pharaoh, saying, "Oh, you are so wonderful and powerful, and could you please, help us out with our problems here?" And the Egyptians would occasionally send in the army and just like knock down rebellions. So basically, they controlled the place at the same time. The Bible is claiming that these people left Egypt, destroyed the Egyptian army, and resettled there. And instead, it's like the Egyptians are in control of the place in the same way that Governor Newsom controls both San Diego and San Francisco, in very analogous ways. So that's the story the Bible's telling you. So even if you are happy with the supernatural, you still got the historical problem that the Israelites escaped Egypt into other Egypt.
I mean, if that book comes to fruition, you got to call me. I'll have you guys back on the show. We got to talk about that.
You're damn right we're going to call you.
A great topic for conversation. Adrian, does any of that make sense? These are just a few of the reasons why we don't buy that the Bible is absolute and perfect truth, and certainly not divinely inspired or written, okay?
I respect that. Thank you guys for expressing your position. Again, this is why I have called. This is a learning journey for myself as I dive into y'all world. So I appreciate it. Thank you for letting me know where y'all coming from.
Appreciate the call. Thank you. I always talk about the Quran Bible Challenge. This was done 10, 12 years ago by a couple of Muslims in the Netherlands. And they went out and they took a Bible and they put a Quran cover on it. And they went out to everyday people in the streets and they said, "Did you hear about this? Here, let me read you a scripture." And they read some of the more offensive stuff, whether it was, I don't remember what the specific stories were, but it was the genocide or the child sacrifice or the rape or the slavery. And of course, everybody was like, "Oh my God, Islam is such a barbaric religion. How could people possibly believe it? It's horrible." And then, of course, at the end, they pull off the cover and it's the Bible and everybody's brain melts. But I think John Loftus calls it the outsider test for faith. I would assume if Adrian had read some of these offensive stories in a competing religious text, he would have thought, "Oh, that's terrible." There's no context in which that makes sense. But if you are already sort of pre-deferring to the Bible, you're going to adopt a defensive posture. I don't know. Are you familiar with Loftus or the outsider test for faith model?
Oh yeah, I've again, I have to keep hawking my wares. I've done
Hawk your wares.
small
Do it.
bit of I've done some book project with Loftus in the past. So I did a chapter in his book on science and religion. I think it was Christianity in the Light of Science. I had a chapter in there about the Star of Bethlehem, which I've written a whole other book about, which is here because yes, I must always have access to the stuff I'm trying to sell.
You're prolific, Cus, aren't you? But good on you. That's what about the
It's what I
Star of
gotta try to
Bethlehem?
do.
Did you get into the physics of it? Like, hey, wait a minute. If it's an actual star, we'd have all been roasted to oblivion, or is it a more esoteric look at the Star of
Oh,
Bethlehem? I'm just curious.
there is approximately 250 years of attempt of reading the story as anything other than the miracle homing beacon that the story describes. And what are all the attempts? Can any of them fit the description of the story? Is there anything science-wise can tell us one way or the other? And what's my ultimate conclusion? Guys, learn to read Greek before you tell the Bible scholars what the book actually says. Because when you go and you actually read what it says, it's actually pretty damned clear that it is a supernatural star. Literally everyone up until the 18th century said the same thing, and they only started changing their minds for a little while because they're like, "Oh shit, this Bible's full of all this miracle stuff, and we believe in this Isaac Newton guy. How do we fix this? What if the miracles were just misunderstood, completely natural events?" That was an entire field of biblical studies in the late 18th, early 19th century. And then everyone, after a while, basically said, the fuck are we doing? They did it with, more poetic language and more often in German, but to put it in German, dieses ist scheiße.
I may have to have you on the show to talk about that as we approach the Christmas holiday. The nativity story is another one of those where even a cursory examination, which I missed for 30 years, but it just falls apart. Jesus was born differently. Where did Joseph and Mary go after the birth of Christ? One account has Herod killing the firstborn. The other doesn't mention Herod. Jesus is found by one person, two people, three people, or four people at the empty tomb, or the empty tomb is discovered. His last words, blah, blah, blah. I mean, it's all a mess. And so we may have to go back. Maybe you and I can go back and cover part of the nativity story together, and you can talk about the Star of Bethlehem. Are you ready for some super chats? Does that sound like a good way to cap the evening, my friend?
I'm super ready.
Okay. I'll let our lovely producer put Alice's super chat up for $5. I feel like the super chats at the end are the aftercare for the line. I know Forrest would never sub-drop me. But we're really aftercare specialists. Think of us as a virtual bartender, counselor, and cheap entertainment. That's what Aaron and I bring to you tonight, and you are most welcome. And thank you for the super chat, Alice.
Oh, hold on. Give me a second. They're
right.
not sending correctly.
Oh, okay. And I'm trying to see what Alice is holding. Is it a flag or is it a pillow? I can't quite tell. I'm curious.
Can't tell.
Too late. It's gone.
All right. But here we go. $5 from @JoshBeban. Speaking of stories, we have the two biggest Godzilla fans hosting today. So, if a good Godzilla remake was done, what would you all like to see in it? Okay, so Seth, you go ahead. I need to go grab something.
He's always got something in his office. Forrest is the same freaking way. Okay, well, the original Toho Godzilla has a very fond place in my heart. The Roland Emmerich film starring Matthew Broderick is an abomination and may be the reason humankind deserves the killer asteroid. I actually usually refuse to admit that the film exists. I only do so now so I can bitch about it the way I bitch about the final season of Game of Thrones. I like Gareth Edwards' Godzilla, except for the fact that Bryan Cranston's son happens to be connected directly to the one way to mechanically destroy the creature at the end with the bomb. I had some real problem, but the creatures themselves were fantastic. Who would I like to see in a Godzilla movie? Well, Bruce Campbell. I'm in. Just put Bruce Campbell in a Godzilla film, and that's a 1-2 punch that I would pay. I'd pay full price tickets for Bruce Campbell. I don't know, Aaron, hit me. What do you got?
Okay, so first off, this was a gift from one of my coworkers because he knew I was a Godzilla fan. So I got it filled up with some brandy. So I can say Godzilla. I'll hold it back up. So yeah, full screen. Sorry, I didn't realize we were going to do that. For
Awesome.
70th anniversary, which was last year. So right now I can say Godzilla no nomiteimasu.
Dun, 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 dun,
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
You see Godzilla minus
I'm
one,
trying to
was that
learn.
as a rapturous a moment? Was it a religious experience for you like it was for me, Godzilla minus one? And also Shin Godzilla. Sublime film.
Here's the thing. Those movies convinced my wife to do a book project with me about the creature. She's an English major. She has her PhD in English. She took me to see Godzilla minus one for my birthday. And she was blown away by the film. And we bonded over that and realized, let's watch all of the films and try to turn this into some popular culture studies. So we've done that. We are in the process. In fact, she's going to be flying out to California for a conference in popular culture studies. And we're both half writing the speech that she'll be, or the paper she'll be presenting. And so, do I like Godzilla enough that I'm trying to learn some Japanese and I'm trying to study this as would a scholar in this, and occasionally it requires Godzilla build Randy.
Shin Godzilla I bought on Blu-ray, and I watch it probably once a year. And I think one of my favorite things, obviously, it's a commentary on bureaucracy and a bunch of other subtext that's going on. But one of my favorite things is for the first 30 minutes, I'm like, why does Godzilla look like an uncooked chicken? And then all of a sudden, of course, it becomes Godzilla, and the special effects they're okay until they're amazing and over the top and mind blowing. And Shin Godzilla is up there with Godzilla -1 for me. But yeah, sorry, I get the vibe. You
Yeah.
could talk Godzilla all night, and then you and your lady are doing. I mean, families who Godzilla together stay together, don't they? That's a good harbinger for the relationship.
I think so. I think so.
Okay.
And we'll put some interesting perspective to it because I'm an American fanboy since a kid. She's actually originally from China, and I had to introduce her to the monster. And our wonderful different perspectives can come together to become the ultimate monster. I don't know. That might be more transform. No, that's more Power Rangers.
I like it though. It's a melding of the powers. Empress Lizard
Yes.
81, $5. Everyone knows the Monad built the pyramids rather. Great show tonight. If you don't know what the Monad is, talk to Forrest and Erica. That's been going on for a couple of months now. It has taken a life of its own.
All right. Now we got $5 from Space Barbarian 3484. I know more about Cardassians than Kardashians. It's more useful in my day-to-day life. Well, I'm pretty sure it's good that I can tell the difference between Kim and Goldicott. I'm at least there.
I have an audiobook I've been listening again. This is my second time through. An audio about the history of Star Trek called The 50-Year Mission. It has several, it's actually a compilation of perspectives from a half a century of people who participated in it. It just pinballs through. It might hear for a paragraph from Gene Roddenberry. You might hear from Isaac Asimov. You might hear from any of the cast members in DS9 or Voyager. You might pinball back to Shatner or whoever. And you hear about the interpersonal relationships. You hear about the concepts involved, the culture, how the sets were built, how the special effects were done. It's comprehensive. I think part one on audio is 25 hours, and then part two is roughly this. So you're talking about roughly 50 hours of narrated audiobook with a host of different people narrating the characters involved. It's remarkable if you are a Trekkie. By the way, I just read that Star Trek IV has been canceled, and it will not happen. And I'm not sure how I feel about it because I didn't care for Beyond or their take on Khan with Into Darkness. I mean, you can't do Khan again, can you, Aaron? Can you do Khan with Benedict Cumberbatch? Can you do Khan?
I would say, no, you can't!
Let's see, are you up or am I? I think it's you with Mystic Mind.
I'll go for it. So £5 from Mystic Mind Analysis. I want to start a petition to abolish gravity, because on whose authority are we obligated to follow the laws of physics? Hashtag anarchist life.
You won't be governed.
Unfortunately, gravity's going to weigh you down no matter what.
You won't be governed. You won't be constrained. Joshua Everett, $5. In the event of conflict between precision and function of language as a medium of communication, I will always bend to utility. I think did that come out of the Jordan Peterson word salad generator? Because there is a website that does that, unless I'm just thick and it actually does mean something.
I don't actually see a conflict between precision and function because you often have to be precise to get the function you want. I'm using a MacBook right now, and believe me, a lot of precision went into making this thing actually function. You can't just wing a microprocessor.
All right.
I think there are people who say that like jargon can make conversations difficult to have, but that just means like some conversations are not for everybody to have. Specialized jargon exists for a reason, I think.
Fair, I agree.
They just make me feel stupid. So, but maybe I kind of feel stupid anyway. You're up, Aaron. What do you got?
Yes. We got $4.99 from Hannah Hoggins. If this Christian God is real, send me to hell. We can listen to R and Rob play metal music all day. I see no appeal in a relationship with a god. What if it's the god of heavy metal?
Who would that be, I wonder? $10 from
Ozzy.
Jamnik. Seth, take this punishment for your poor stewardship of the audience by making us endure Danny. Kidding. Best thing from that call was him questioning your patience. Hashtag momentum guy, Seth Flex radio skills. It's funny. I did a show with Forrest Valkai 2 days ago. And two subsequent comments, I mean, one right after the other, after I kind of wrapped a call up with this guy named William, maybe too soon. I like to take the first exit if I feel momentum bleeding. And I get that wrong, but I jumped out of the call and said, next. And so somebody in the comments was like, I really appreciate the fact that Seth understands that these things need to go and he keeps the flow going and he's a pro and he knows what he's doing. And that's fantastic. And the very next comment was, God damn, Seth is horrible at this. William just wanted to have a conversation. Doesn't he know how to take calls? And it's just one right next to the other. This is what I'm up against, and then you become paranoid. But thank you for the kind words and for the punishment. Jamnik, I receive your lashings in good faith.
Let me go get a bell. Ding, shame. Ding,
Yeah.
shame. $5 from Secular Felinist. Why does a burger have less energy than a steak? Because it's in the ground state.
No, I don't get lashes. Someone else deserves lashes for that. Lashes for that. Jamnik, $5. Don't get secular. Is it felinist or felinist? Felinist? Felinist.
Felinist? Because like feline?
Okay. Don't give secular felinist any beef for that joker. When we meet MEAT, I'll be in a bad mood. Hashtag bovine is greater than divine. I'm going to leave it hanging out there and move on. Thanks for the super chat.
Oh, I was going to stake out for another one.
God, you too? Is this a conspiracy? The gang ganging up?
Yep,
Go ahead.
Go ahead. I do not apologize. Okay.
Gang punning going on here.
Yes. What is it? I don't know where it comes from. I don't know which RPG, but it's an image it's like saying, coward, intend your puns. And I do. I intend my puns.
Okay.
All right. $10 from Stephen G. Clinard, 1766. Steve, you've been at this for a while. Have you been doing this since 1766? Okay. Dr. Adair, Jonathan M.S. Pierce, hasn't been showing up on my YouTube feed. Can you provide an update on how he is doing? And please send my best wishes because he is awesome. Not only is he awesome, but he's also extremely active. He has a different YouTube channel where he's been doing politics and especially following the Ukraine war with multiple videos every day. So I think, I forget the name of the channel, but if you basically look up like Tippling Philosopher, Geopolitics, something like that, you should be able to find his channel. Like I say, he's been doing this now for several years because Putin won't leave Ukraine. And he has been, like I say, every day, multiple videos tracking what's going on in Ukraine and other countries that are involved with these international relations. And as you can imagine, that also means following American politics. And every time Trump says words, I'm going to generously call them, something has to be said about that.
$20 from Becker's 29. Bruce Campbell in a Godzilla movie is the best thing I have ever heard. Take my money. Hey, it's a movie date. Call me. We'll talk. All right.
$9.99 from Hannah Hodkins. Okay. The only god I will ever be near is Godzilla. With R and Rob playing metal music, Seth doing sticky notes in the back, and Aaron writing a book about it. If I may also add, I only knew about this because of the last Olympics in Paris. There was, in the opening ceremony, a rock band group, and if memory serves, their name is Gojira. So, French heavy metal rock band named Gojira, they should be part of this party as well, because we need French Godzilla. We kind of already have that, though, in the American 98 Godzilla. Sort of.
which doesn't exist. I'm sorry, doesn't exist. I've blocked it out of my mind.
May I give
Roland,
may I give one positive thing about the 98 film?
wait, go ahead.
The name of the ship that Godzilla attacks at the beginning of the film
What
is the
was it?
Kobayashi Maru.
Oh, I didn't catch that.
So that's the only good thing I'm going to give it. All right.
Joshua Everett, Lux got my meaning. It was more about Phil Bros using jargon to confuse issues.
Yeah.
See, Lux is really the smart one, guiding us, parenting us through these conversations, and for that we are grateful. Thanks for the super chat. And that's
All right.
it. Aaron, it's been a ball, dude. Thanks for hanging out with me. It's makes me feel like we should sit down over a coffee and just talk, catch up. I don't know where you live. Maybe we'll bump into each other on the circuit out there. But I'm serious. I may ping you about the Star of Bethlehem, even though I'm sure the book's several years old. That's a relevant conversation as we get into the reason for the season kind of thing. And since you and I are both agents in the war on Christmas, where we want to make it illegal to say Christmas, apparently, according to some people, it might be appropriate. Any final thoughts today before we put a punctuation mark on it, brother?
It's been a pleasure being on the line tonight. It's been a pleasure working with you, Seth, and more continued collaborations I very much look forward to. And of course, I also need to show a shout out to our crew, our mods, our screeners. They made the show actually function. Our patrons is the reason we can have any of this good stuff being funded. You guys watching make this happen. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and good night. See you next time.